Good afternoon, everyone. It's my understanding we have reached our quorum, so if everyone could take a seat, we could get started. Good afternoon and welcome to Wenham's annual town meeting. I see a few people still getting checked in, but it's going to take us a few minutes just to go for the opening, so we won't start any voting without you, hopefully. Since this is my second meeting as moderator, and with a full slate of issues to address today, I will ask for your patience as we work through our way through these articles, and with your guidance of town council, I will do my very best. Please note that today's meeting is being recorded. At this time, for all of those who are able, would you please stand? We've got the presentation of flags by members of our local Girl Scouts, Brownie, and Daisy troops. And I would like to call on Robert Brown, Petty Officer First Class of U.S. Coast Guard. And he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't need it. Good afternoon. Thank you. Trudy, thank you for having me do this. Board of Selectmen, Town Management, I appreciate it very, very much. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll give the girls a few minutes to put the flags in place. You may be seated. The town's bylaws require that we have a quorum of 5% of registered voters. I have been advised by our town clerk, Diane Bucco, that the quorum has been met, so I will now call the annual meeting to order. We are going to omit the return of the warrant, which shows that it was properly served. At this time, I'm going to call on Senator Bruce Tarr and Representative Brad Hill, who will provide us with a brief update on the current state of affairs. As always, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you for giving us a quick opportunity to come before you. Before I give you my quick remarks, I just want to remind people who may be new to the town. I was reminded as the Girl Scouts and Brownies and others bringing the flag before us that your town flag was missing up at the State House a few years back, and we actually had a group of Girl Scouts come. And when Senator Tarr and I were giving a tour of the Great Hall, they asked, where is the Wenham flag? Because we have all the communities bring their flags up to us. As we were looking around, it came to our attention that we didn't have a Wenham town flag representing up at the State House. So your Girl Scouts right here in this community came back to Wenham. They actually held a contest where they drew what they would hope a flag would look like. And if I remember correctly, there were 3 options for the citizens to vote for, and you were able to go downtown to the town hall and to your library, and you could vote on what your flag was to look like. They then went and raised the funds to create 3 flags, one that you see here, one used for parades, and they came back up to the State House and they presented the State House with the Wenham town flag. So I am reminded that your Girl Scouts are so good here in the town of Wenham. They deserve a round of applause. So my brief update I'll talk about the Massachusetts House. We are about ready to undertake the state budget in the Massachusetts House in about 2 weeks. It's going to be released in this upcoming week. And of course, that will tell us what we're going to be looking forward to in terms of local aid for your community. We have been meeting regularly with your Board of Selectmen as well as your school committee and your finance folks to get a grip on what their priorities are for this fiscal year. And I want to talk about the school first. At the beginning of this fiscal year, we were notified by your superintendent and by your school committee that the special education circuit breaker law, which gives back 75% of extraordinary costs for special ed back to school districts, had been cut down to 65% in the state budget. And the reason for that is every year the DESE actually tells the legislature what the amount of reimbursement will be, and we plug that number in to make sure that we reimburse you the money that you deserve to have. This year, we actually had some increases in the special ed costs that were not included in the figure that was given to the legislature. So 3 months into the fiscal year, we saw that there was going to be a major cut to the special education circuit breaker law. Working with your communities and districts similar to yours, we were able to, this week, put the money back into a supplemental budget so that in this fiscal year, that cut will be brought back up to the 75%. We just voted on that in the House. The Senate's going to take it up next week, and the governor has already said that that is something that he supports and will be signing that into law. So the cut that we thought was going to happen because of your advocacy will be brought back up to the 75%. That's the type of partnership that we have with your committees and your local officials, and I'm very proud to say that we were able to not only hear your pleas, but able to fix the issue for this current fiscal year, and it will be addressed before June. So thank you for that. Another issue that we've been working on your behalf has to do with the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the culverts here in Wenham. And we heard very loud and clear from your local selectmen that we need to address Chapter 90, which you're going to be voting on later this afternoon. We need to see those funds quicker than we have normally seen in the past 2 or 3 fiscal years. The House voted on the Chapter 90 funding this past week. The Senate will be taking it up. The governor's going to sign it. It's at $200 million. Those funds will be coming back to your cities and towns in a much quicker fashion than they have been in the last fiscal 2 or 3 fiscal years, so that we can address some of the roadway issues that were caused because of this winter storm. Again, a partnership and a red line from your town administrator and your selectmen who said we need to get this quicker or sooner rather than later. I'm happy to report those funds will be here very quickly so that we can address those. Another issue that we were very happy to work with you on is your culverts around town. If you can go back to 2006 during the Mother's Day storm, when many of your culverts were in disrepair because of the amount of water that were going through those culverts, 4 of your major culverts were in disrepair. We were able to get funding for 3 of them during that period. We worked with your community over this last fiscal year, and we were able to bring $500,000 to the town of Wenham to fix the Essex Street culvert for this fiscal year. So again, that's a partnership that we were happy to work with your community on. And I will say that moving forward, infrastructure continues to be a top priority of the Baker administration. And there are plenty of grants that have been made available for cities and towns to apply for, either through Safe Streets or community block grants and things of that sort. We're working with your community to address some of those other needs that have been brought to our attention for this fiscal year. And I'm, again, happy to report that those dollars are flowing, and Wenham is seeing a lot of those dollars for this upcoming fiscal year. The economy in Massachusetts has done very well over the last 6 months. We have the lowest unemployment rate than we have had since I've been in office. And moving forward, it looks as though the economy continues to grow. What we're not seeing is, even though people are out working, is the income tax revenue continues to come in lower than expected. You would think, obviously, if people are working, then the income tax revenue should be increased. But what we're seeing is that people who are getting these jobs aren't necessarily getting it in compensation, they're getting it in benefits, health care, vacation pay, things of that sort. So we're concerned a little bit about that because we're thrilled that we're at this rate in unemployment, but we're a little nervous that the revenue that we thought would be coming in with that hasn't really matched. So we're a little concerned about that, but moving forward, we keep an eye on it. Healthcare continues to be the big budget buster for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our Mass Health account every year is growing between $200, $300, and $400 million. And when your revenues are only increasing by 1 or 2%, we have to take those dollars from other programs. And that's what's happened the last 2 to 3 fiscal years. Moving forward, we have seen increased revenues for the state. We're happy about that. That's how we were able to get the special ed money moving forward. And with those additional revenues, I hope, and this is the last thing that I'll talk about, is the regional school transportation. For a district like Hamilton, Wenham, and Masco, and Manchester, Essex, that particular line item continues to be level funded over the last couple of years. And I'm happy to report that Hamilton Wenham has joined with Triton Regional School District and others across the state to really put pressure on the legislature to keep the promise that was made many years ago that if you were to join a regional school district, that we would pay 100% of those costs. There's a push this year to make us keep that promise. I'm honest with you, and I'm going to be honest with you now. I don't think we can get to 100%, but there's going to be a big push to make it 85%, which would be a lot more than the 65% that we're currently funding. Senator Tarr and I have signed on to 2 letters to our Ways and Means chairs asking for that 85%. There will be a push for the 100%, but as I said, a lot of the dollars that we had hoped could go into those programs are going to be going into the health care. So all in all, a good year. Again, revenues are stronger, and we think with those added dollars that we're going to get from gaming and marijuana sales, that those dollars should be going into education funding, and that's what we are going to push this fiscal year as your legislators. So I'll leave you with that because I know you have a very long day. We always appreciate you giving us this opportunity. Our offices are always open. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about today, please call, or any other issue. Don't ever hesitate to call. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and I'd like to bring my colleague in the Senate, Senator Bruce Tarr, up to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Representative, and thank you, Madam Moderator, and to the members of town meeting. It is great to be here with all of you again today, and I do want to commend everyone for coming out on what is a beautiful Saturday when the snow has finally stopped and let up enough so that we could all get here safely to be able to make important decisions relative to the future of the town. Representative Hill and I do very much cherish our relationship that we have with the people at the front of this room who make decisions and guide this community every single day. And it is true that your town administrator is not known by either Representative Hill or I for his shyness. And we do appreciate that because on so many occasions he reaches out to us when there's an opportunity for the state to do something on behalf of the town of Wenham. And as you've heard Representative Hill explain, on numerous instances recently there has been, and we've been able to bring those things to fruition. So Representative Hill covered a lot of territory. I will only mention a couple of additional things. One, in the Senate, we have been working very hard along with our House colleagues on reforming our criminal justice system. We were very pleased to adopt with substantial margins just a few days ago a criminal justice reform bill for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that does two things. Number one, increases the opportunity for productive rehabilitation of people that are going to re-enter our society so that they can do so without recidivism. And number two, strengthens penalties and makes sure we have strong enforceable penalties for those who are selling poison into our communities in the form of fentanyl and carfentanil, which are taking lives across this Commonwealth. That bill is now on the governor's desk. We anticipate that he will take action within the next few days, and we look forward to that action, just as we look forward to in the Senate action on the part of the House with regard to health care reform. We've passed a version of health care reform to try to be able to control the cost of health care while improving access and efficiency. We look forward to our House colleagues taking up the subject so that we can move on with that as well and have some productive change, because Representative Hill has told you just about how much the cost of health care undermines other things that we're trying to do in state government, just as it does with things that you're going to try to do here today at town meeting for the town. And so we're going to continue to work on that. Lastly, I will touch on the budget situation. And, you know, when the representative mentions that they've spent money on this and that, I just want you to know it's because under the Constitution, they get to spend the money first. The good news for us is we get to spend the money last. And so I do want you to know that the House did a remarkable job in closing the gap with regard to the circuit breaker and making sure that we're able to meet our commitment of that 75% reimbursement. And I want you to know what an important role the representative played in that. Brad has been calling people's attention to the potential of that kind of deficiency for years, and he took the lead in the House, and fortunately the House voted to close the gap, and I anticipate that very shortly, within the next week or so, the Senate will take up that supplemental spending document, and I will commit to you that I will work very hard to reciprocate so that the Senate matches the commitment that the House has made, and we close that gap. Beyond that, however, one of the things that we are seeing that is a hopeful sign with regard to our state's economy is that for many, many months of recovery and years, as the representative was mentioning, we did have this paradoxical situation where unemployment was very low, but state revenue was not increasing at the rate that you would think in the midst of that kind of a recovery. Well, the best economic theory about why that's been happening is that even though people are working, there also has not been wage growth that usually is the second prong of an economic recovery, so that people haven't been getting bonuses and increases in compensation to match what you would expect in a supercharged economy with regard to employment. Fortunately, it appears that is starting to change. And we have oftentimes been at this microphone lamenting for you the economic state of the Commonwealth. And since the sun is out and we're all here today and the snow has stopped, I want to bring a little bit of good news and let you know that as of right now, with regard to the state budget, we are over $800 million ahead of what we projected we would be at. And so if that trend continues, we're going to be in a very good circumstance to try to direct some money toward things that we have been neglecting. And so the representative mentioned that we do expect an income stream from marijuana. We also expect one from gaming. And very importantly, in the gaming legislation, there is a set-aside for education, but it's non-specific. It doesn't earmark for K-12 or what have you. We both feel very strongly that it should, and we're going to work to make that happen. So as we look at that situation, and as we look at the budgets that are approaching, and of course the House gets to go first because they get to spend the money first, they're going to take up the budget in April. And we will take up the budget in May. More specifically, we'll take it up the week before Memorial Day, and the House will take it up in just a couple of weeks. And the representative and I have been working with our colleagues as a result of our partnership with the leadership of the schools in our region to say this is the year when we have these three things lining up that we need to do better. And so we did put together a letter to the Ways and Means Committees of the House and the Senate, and we said a number of things. Number one, that we need to do better with minimum per pupil aid. Right now in the governor's budget, that number is $20 per student. In our letter, we're saying it should be closer to $100 per student. We're also raising the issue, as the representative mentioned, of regional school transportation, where the statute says, and the promise was made, that it should be funded at 100%. So we're asking it to be funded at 100%, but as in any negotiation, you never start where you want to end. And so we know that 100% is a lot, and we'll probably get something lesser, but we want to make the case that it's time to meet that commitment. In addition to that, we are also asking in this letter that we try to come as close as we can to fully funding the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. And just a digression for a moment about that commission. Thank you. Were you on the commission? No, anyway, so just want to make a point. That in 1993, when we passed the Ed Reform Act, which led to the foundation budget and the way that we now fund our schools, there was a component of that bill, and now that law, that said every few years the foundation budget should be reviewed to ensure that what we were mandating that you have to spend was matched by the support that we were giving from state government. And up until a few years ago, that review had never happened. Never. So Representative Hill and I and some of our colleagues fought to get that review done. There was one done initially a few years ago that wasn't very robust. The most recent one was. And what did it say? Well, it confirmed some things that we've been saying all along. Number one, the foundation budget does not accurately reflect the number of students enrolled in special education. And number two, the cost of health insurance is not anywhere near adequately covered by the current foundation budget. And there were other recommendations, but those are the two that affect every school district in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, to remedy those things takes a significant amount of money, somewhere $800 million to $1 billion. What we're saying in our letter to the Ways and Means Committee is let's make a significant gain in trying to close that gap. The governor did some of that in his budget proposal. We want to build on that. And the last thing that we said in our letter was that we ought to have a very robust pothole account, which is the account that's used for extraordinary circumstances that a school system might face in the middle of a budget year, and it needs help. So we want to put more money into that as well. Now, the most important news about this is that letter that we put out was signed by over 50 members of the legislature. And so we are getting support not only from our colleagues, but also school districts and municipal governments all across the state have been taking that letter as a template and writing themselves to the Ways and Means Committee saying this is the framework for what should happen in this year's budget. Now, we all know that Brad and I can't stand here and promise anything in the legislative process because it is highly subject to change. But what we can say to you is that we are seeing the stars begin to line up for some significant gains, and neither he nor I are going to miss any opportunity to try to capture those gains because it's been far too long since we've been fully funding the promises we've already made. And that's my last point. You will likely hear lots of proposals on how to spend all of that money that we both talked about at the microphone. And one of the things that we're insisting on is before we go off onto the horizon and pursue some new, perhaps very noble and very glamorous programs, we need to keep the commitments we've already made. And we're going to fight for that over the next several weeks, and we hope to have, the next time we gather, some very good news for you. But until then, please know that the way that we can try to achieve these things, and have any hope of accomplishing them at all, is because of the fact that you do have a finance committee, a board of selectmen, a school committee, a superintendent, a town administrator, who always come to us and say, how can we work together? They give us good information, they're passionate about the things that they bring to our attention, and they support our requests when we say, hey, we need some help too in terms of generating local support to say these things are important. In the end, that's the way our democracy is supposed to work. And we're going to continue to work at it, but not before thanking all of you for being out here on this very sunny, if not warm, Saturday, and before thanking everyone here at the front of the room for the partnership that makes us find so many opportunities and to accomplish so many things. It's an honor to represent this town, and it's an honor to work with my legislative colleague, Brad Hill. Thank you very much, and have a great town meeting.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to thank a few people, but first of all, I want to thank you. There's many new faces out here this afternoon. This room is almost packed, and I absolutely appreciate everyone taking the time out of a gorgeous Saturday and coming here to help us with the town's business. I'd like to thank the Boy Scout Troop 28 and Cub Scout Pack 28 for assisting with the deliveries of the annual reports. Also, thank you to the Bailey family for organizing and assigning the scouts to the routes. Gary and Marcia Cheeseman, Bill Wilson, Judy Babrisky, and Don Gamalamo for helping us to sort, bag, and deliver some of the annual reports. Again, I'd like to thank the Girl Scout, Brownie, and Daisy troops for their presentation of the flags, and to B.J. Brown for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd also like to thank WVIS for sponsoring the lunch today before today's meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to have lunch. And Fresh Foods for the food donation. The Ayers family for the flowers donated in memory of Hilda Rice Ayer. And also the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District for hosting us here today in at the Bureau and support for their facilities team and handling the behind-the-scenes logistics. I would also like to thank our town administrator, finance director, I have no idea. The Board of Selectmen and the Finance and Advisory Committee for the time and attention they have put into preparing for this day. Their efforts, along with the town department heads and staff leading up to this meeting, their help and guidance, especially guidance, is always appreciated. Okay. I was going to ask for everybody to turn off or mute your cell phones or mobile devices if you hear me. As with our tradition, I will read the list of town residents who have passed away during the year. And before I begin, I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's last names. Peter Panakoulis, Robert Welch Jr., Renee Flynn, John Summersby, Kula Frangos, Ruth Stevens, Nancy Spotford, Claire Bolus, Dorothy Majowski, Michael Devine, Gordon Sato, Margaret King, Ayers D'Souza, Minot Fry, William Hidden, Teresa Jacks, Scott Perkins, Alice Ohanian, John Conan, Job Emerson, Robert Punch Jr., Mark White Jr., Phyllis Parsons, Marie Kennerson, Ann Duffy, Marion Vahiri, Alice Ella, Beatrice Pergoli, Arshag Ohanian, John McHugh, Thomas Anthony, Marie Beckett, Paul Wilson, June Wilds, Dorothy Sudeikis, and James Sullivan. If we could have a moment of silence to show our respect to these people and their families. Thank you. Before I proceed, I'm going to ask for your indulgence for a few minutes. I would like to begin by acknowledging the 37 years of service that David Geike provided to the town of Wenham. David began on the planning board in 1981 and served for many years as its chair, presiding over dozens of different projects over the years. He is also a stalwart and well-known town meeting participant. Now that David is not seeking another 5-year term on the planning board, we hope he can enjoy his Thursday evenings again for the first time in a long time. David, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and your fellow residents, Thank you all. Thank you for all that you have done for the town. And if I might add, we also thank Anne for her patience with him. Changing gears a bit, Wenham will be celebrating 375 years since its incorporation this September. As chair of the 375th Anniversary Committee, I am very proud to be a part of a group of fellow residents who are working hard to coordinate events surrounding this significant anniversary. I would like to ask committee member Gary Cheeseman to give a brief presentation.
Good afternoon. So the Board of Selectmen appointed a committee last year, and this is going to be just an update as to what has transpired so far and what our plans are ahead. But let me first introduce the chairman, said Trudy Reed. Kirsten Alexander is the vice chair of the committee, and Harriet Davis the treasurer. Also we have Diane Bucco, Bob Hicks, Diana Lang, Barbara Locke, and Kristen Noon on the committee. So to date, we started off with the logo contest. So some of those that went to luncheon saw that we have those t-shirts already available for sale. And we'd like to congratulate Sadie Gambier on the winning design. So those are available and will be at the town hall going forward. Last 30 November, we had the auction night at the Wenham Museum, where we raised funds for our activities this year. Very successful. We'd like to thank again all the donors and for those that participated in that evening. Hopefully all those that subscribe to the Hamilton Wenham Chronicle, and if not, the COA newsletter or online at the website, you can read Bob Hicks' continuing history of Wenham growing up in the 30s, and that will continue through this year as we move into the 40s and 50s in his storyline. Thank you, Bob, for doing that. We've had a writing contest, and I'd like to congratulate Buffy Colt, who is the winner of her story about growing up on the farm on Larch Row. And I believe that story is also going to be available on the website as well, or else in printed form up at Town Hall. Very interesting. At Town Hall, we're going to have a display case. It's in place right now, currently showing commemorative plates and so forth from previous anniversaries and town documents. The Veterans Committee is going to take the month of May and install artifacts from Wenham veterans, followed in June by the police and fire will be providing their histories, and we'll go forward there with some history on farming and recreation and so forth in town. So on to the sales pitch here. So here's our items for sale. We've started off with t-shirts, baseball caps, sweatshirts, pen and pencil sets, and very nice tote bags that are available. Had them available today. They'll be at the town hall going forward at the town clerk's office, and voting day on Thursday. So get yours before they sell out, hopefully. All right, going forward then, our next event is the Visual Arts Contest. Rules are available online and at the town hall, so we welcome all your entrances to that contest. Also coming up, we have the one side note that's not on the slide, but next Friday at the Wenham Museum, they're having a brown bag lunch focused on farming in Wenham, and that's on Colonel Timothy Pickering, who, if you don't know, was Secretary of State, Secretary of War, Postmaster General of the United States back in his day, and was the founder of the Essex Agricultural Society, which we know of today as the Topsfield Fair, and lived out on Larch Row. So that should be a very good talk on next Friday at the Wenham Museum. Also coming up is that AP History at the Wenham Regional High School has been doing oral histories and written histories on some of our distinguished senior citizens in town, including our two remaining World War II veterans. And we'll have a presentation night later on, I expect in May, so they can provide those results and presentations. And as you know, we've had the Citizens Academy in the past. This year, in December, we're planning to have a historic town meeting based upon the 1640s with characters present. So we're going to do that in the Wenham Congregational Church where they were originally held. And we invite everyone to attend that, both the Citizens Academy and our mock town meeting for that. Then on to the big day. Althea Cranton and Kristen Noon have volunteered to be the chiefs of the parade and the field day. We still need a volunteer to be chief of logistics and chief of marketing for this day. But on 8 September, we'll have a parade starting at Bucher School to Town Hall and then down to Pingree Field, where we'll have various activities, including a public safety, police versus fire department baseball or a softball game. We hope to have a video drone shoot so that we can get a photo of all the citizens of Wenham at one time on the field, if that works out right. And our local school music groups, any civic organizations and such will be in attendance. So last thing here is, yes, recruiting drive. If you have a neighborhood group, a civic group, a family group, or any other group that would like to participate in the parade, then let us know. And or if you have special talents that you'd like to display, or your group wants to display at the Community Day at Pingree Field on 8 September, let us know as well. So still looking for plenty of volunteers for that day. And we're going to have, hopefully, great weather on the 8th and a huge turnout for this big celebration for us. One last word, I'd like to thank our high school students that helped out with the sales day. That was Reed Miller, Ethan Howell, Alden Johnson, Mae Folger, Gwyneth Fitzpatrick, and Max McDonald. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. So we have I started to say cast of characters, but it's our town meeting cast. Some brief introductions. In addition to myself on stage is Diane Bucco and Town Clerk and Town Council Lauren Goldberg. Seated in the front of the stage to my right is the Board of Selectmen, Chairman Jack Wilhelm, Catherine Harrison, and John Clemenzi, who are joined by our Town Administrator Peter Lombardi. The Finance and Advisory Committee is seated at the center table, led by the Chair Alex Bagan, Mike Therian, Jim Purdy, David Molitano, and Carrie Gelsman. They are joined by Leslie Davison, who is the town's finance director. Also in attendance is our school committee chair, Josh Lebo, and school superintendent, Dr. Michael Harvey, as well as the assistant superintendent, Jeff Sands, and committee members, David Polito, Michelle Bailey, Janice Bertram, and Stacy Metternich. At this meeting, the town's clerk role is to keep the official record of all motions made and all votes taken. In the event of a counted vote, the town clerk has several election officers standing by. The moderator's responsibilities include presiding over and regulating the procedures, deciding questions of order, declaring votes, and granting leave to address the meeting. We have many articles to cover today, so please remember that we are in a legislative session for the town of Wenham. Together, we will vote on the budget for FY 2019, capital purchases, and a number of bylaws. We are here today with our friends and neighbors. I ask that we all remain cordial and respectful. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a cell phone or a handheld device, if you could mute it or turn it off, that would be greatly appreciated. The conduct of meeting is governed by the rules of town meeting time, a special set of parliamentary procedures developed by the Massachusetts Moderators Association for the New England Town Meetings. To ensure that we have an orderly meeting and that people who want to speak are able to do so, permission of the moderator is required to address the meeting. If you wish to speak, please come to one of the microphones, and when you are recognized, please state your name and street address. While we have a number of non-residents in attendance, we generally allow only residents to speak on a particular matter. However, I will assume that the meeting is comfortable allowing the town administrator, department heads, and town council to speak when they have relevant information and after being recognized by the moderator. The superintendent of the school has a statutory right to speak, and I will similarly assume that the superintendent may ask the assistant superintendent or other school officials to provide information to the meeting. Only registered voters may vote. When you checked in, each voter should have received a blue card. I have the authority to declare a majority vote or a 2/3 vote, although my declaration may be challenged by 7 or more voters. The meeting may also, through a motion to fix the method of voting, ask for a count of vote or for a secret ballot as long as the motion is made prior to the vote. Reconsiderations is only allowed if there is compelling change in circumstances. For those of you who are holding a blue card, we may be required to do a hand count. If it comes to that, for those who are standing along the walls or in the foyer, I will ask that you take a seat. It is much easier to count the votes if we get to that. Thank you. For those of you who are new to town meeting, action is taking on a motion under each article. A copy of the official motions that was provided today is in the blue handout that should have been on the chair, and the text of motions will be projected on the screen as well. The Finance and Advisory Committee, Board of Selectmen, and limited number of other boards and committees will make the main motion under each article. Thereafter, we will allow the maker of the motion or their designee to further explain the proposal as necessary or answer any questions. If there are questions of procedure, it is best to ask them before a motion is made. The main motion may be amended within the scope of the article, which is a decision within the sole discretion of the moderator. If a proposed amendment is long and complex, it must be in writing. To simplify things, today I will only allow one amendment to be considered at one time. After that motion to amend is voted, a new motion to amend may be made. Debate on any motion or amendment must be courteous and respectful. To that end, speakers should refrain from personal references and attacks on individuals. It is appropriate to refer to an earlier speaker as such, rather than by name. If a voter believes that debate has gone on long enough, then a motion may be made to move the question. Note that someone who wishes to move the question must come to the microphone, like any other person wishing to speak, and be recognized. A person who wants to move the question cannot do so if they first speak to the merits of the pending motion. Such a motion must be approved by a 2/3 vote. If the motion to move the question passes, we will move immediately to the pending motion with no further debate. Moving on to the business before us today, the warrant presents 32 articles which require action by this body. Please note the inclusion of the warrant book, the commentary of each article. The purpose of the commentaries is to give you some idea of each article does and why it is on the warrant. For each article, I will provide a brief summary of the matter and then turn to the appropriate person to make the motion. With respect to one of the last articles addressing the moderator's term, I want to disclose that the selectmen included this article on the warrant at my request. I do not intend to speak on the article. I believe I am capable of impartially moderating the discussion and vote, and unless I hear otherwise, will act as moderator during that discussion. Hearing no objection, we will ready to start motion 1. Article 1 is the budget appropriations. The annual operating budget for the town for FY 2019, the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, is set forth in Article 1. All expenditures required to provide town services are organized by categories. The Finance and Advisory Committee, working with the town administrator, finance director, board of selectmen, and department heads, compiles the annual budget and will present a motion to authorize expenditures to operate the town and provide funding therefor. Finance and Advisory Committee Chair Alex Bagan, on behalf of the committee, will give an overview of the budget and of the town's financial condition. Dr. Michael Harvey, the Superintendent of Schools, will then make a presentation on the Regional Schools District's FY 2019 budget. Given this coming year's budget constraints, only a portion of the town's assessment to fund the Regional School District's annual budget is included in Article 1. The balance of funds needed to fully cover Wenham's share of the school's district budget is included in Article 3. Mr. Bagan will provide more details about this in his presentation. After both presentations are completed, Mr. Bagan will make the formal motion under Article 1 and will then, as usual, read the budget totals by department. If you have a question, comment, or proposed amendment on a particular budget line item, just say hold, following reference to that budget line. After all the categories have been read, we will go back through the budget to each held item. At that point, I will recognize any person that has a question, comment, or amendment. Amendments to the official motion might include a change in the dollar amount proposed for expenditure. A motion to amend the official motion under Article 1 may take a form similar to the following. I move to amend the main motion by decreasing the amount to be appropriated for line whatever from one amount to another, higher or lower, and to adjust accordingly the amount to be raised and appropriated under Article 1. When making this motion, it is very important to keep in mind that the town has a very limited levy capacity, only $8, based on the FY 2019 budget as presented in Article 1. Once all such held matters have been disposed of and action taken on any amendments, town meeting will vote on the motion as amended, if applicable. Mr. Bagan, are you ready to begin?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, citizens of Wenham. Thank you for being here this afternoon to participate in our annual town meeting and be part of this democratic and legislative process. We're to the point now where we've had a number of fantastic opening remarks and ceremony and hearing about great things that are going on with the town. That isn't to say it's all downhill from here, but of course it will become, as you'd expect, a little bit more serious in nature with respect to the financial considerations and things that we'll seek to explain to you, help inform you of, so that you can make educated voting decisions as residents of Wenham. As the moderator made brief introductions, which I appreciate, and thank her for doing so, I just wanted to call out because we do have new FinCom members this year. So seated at the front of the room from your right to left, Carrie Gelsma, Jim Purdy, David Molitano, and Mike Therian. Carrie, Jim, and Mike are new FinCom members this year. They joined Mike and I, having served for the past 3 years on FinCom. We're, of course, seated for 5 members. And I just wanted to thank them at this point in time, just briefly, because of their commitment and their tireless efforts in this budget process, which really kind of begins late summer, fall, picks up steam over the winter, and then gets crazy in January, February timeframe. For really their commitment, because we couldn't do this if we weren't kind of a cohesive fin compadres, has been stated at one point, group working very closely with our town administrator, our finance director, supportive board of selectmen, of course. And in particular, I believe that the diversity of opinions and backgrounds and perspectives that each of the FinCom members brings to the table is important. Several of us are, for example, parents of children who play sports or in schools. We're all active members of the community, as are you, and just for their thoughtfulness in our discussions and deliberations in our meetings, I wish to thank them. So in terms of the format going forward, thank you. So we want to use everyone's time efficiently. This is a great, large turnout for town meeting. I suspect that those on the wings and in back prefer to stand and do not want to come up, but I do see some empty seats. So I'll just point that out in case anyone gets tired of standing. We want to use time efficiently, and the format at this point will be as follows. I have a number of slides, which hopefully you can see in the projector and the screen in front of you on the stage. And because many of the items will include budgetary items, I will read more so than I might normally. in summarizing the information in the slides and adding in color so that those of you who can't see the items directly can be made aware. There are about 10 slides or so, so it's not totally overbearing, and I'll try to move things forward. After that point, we'll start to get to the meat of the financial articles, of course, Articles 1 through 3. We hear a lot about Articles 1 and 3 in particular. And then Dr. Harvey, Superintendent of the Regional School District, will make a presentation on the school's budget as well, and then we'll get into Article 1. So that's kind of a summary. As the moderator indicated as well, we will go through, as we have in years past, the departmental line items for each of the overall budget. And that will follow both our presentations, and you'll hear the department and the dollar amount. And of course, that is when, if you have a question and wish to discuss it afterwards, you simply state hold so that everybody can hear you. Okay, so the first slide is a summary of the fiscal 19 budget summary. And I do want to address, perhaps kind of in addition to the opening remarks, kind of the obvious, which is that we have an override vote in front of us. And that's perhaps why there is a larger turnout this year and why we'll have a ballot vote as well, including that budgetary override, Proposition 2.5 override on Thursday. That's obvious. That's important. There are serious financial considerations, fiscal considerations for everyone to make and be informed of. And I think the question that would be on my mind if I was in the audience as a resident, which of course I am, or home watching or not watching, is why is there an override for Wenham's budget this year? Is this a surprise? Is it because of a problem or a mistake or a misstep? Was it known to those who are kind of closer to the budget, the town administration, the town officials, the FinCom, et cetera? And what could have been done to avoid it, perhaps? And of course, that is, I present as just basic background thinking that I would kind of head down that path in seeking to then understand, okay, given the numbers and given the facts and recommendations, how might you ultimately vote? And I would say that, Senator Tarr said that the financial picture is a little bit more rosy in the state of Massachusetts, which is great news. Perhaps it's a little bit less sanguine, the picture that we present here within Wenham. And the reason for that is, I would state that the override is simply a matter of excess levy capacity being utilized and the trend towards diminished, lower and lower levy capacity over the past, say, 5 fiscal years, just to point out that particular trend. It's largely, of course, due to the increase in the regional school district assessment to the town of Wenham, and which in turn is in part driven by our student enrollment shift, and we'll get into that. So I would simply like to state that this is not in any way a surprise to the FinCom, I think, or the Board of Selectmen or Finance Director. If you look at our annual report, if you've had a chance to read it, I know some of the warrant books were only recently, because of some printing delays and the like, only recently delivered to many residents. But in the opening first few pages, our annual report explains some of these financial pressures and fiscal challenges that the town has been up against, not only this year, but in the past several years. And our prior chair of FinCom did an excellent job in last year's annual report stating the same, which is that these challenges are not going to abate, and we snuck by under the skin of our teeth last year without an override. Here I am, so I'll get to the slides. So Article 1 is the FY19 budget appropriation, the amount of $18,672,060. This is an increase of $816,583 from the current fiscal year. It's about 4.4%. We're going to refer to this as our levy limit budget, because when we talk about our override, naturally, we need to think about our levy limit. This budget, Article 1, is not an override budget, but our levy limit. Article 3 is the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School District operating override budget, if you will, which adds to that $18,331,294 for about a 6.3% total increase. So we'll think of Article 3 as our override article. Now, if you were to add the $2 increases in Article 1 and Article 3, you'd have $1,147,877. Those are the total proposed budget increases. 27% of those are related to municipal expenditures, and the other 73 are related to the regional and vocational school assessments. To give you a breakdown, in terms of the allocation to each of those, to that total dollar increase. On the revenue side, projected local receipts are projected to increase $317,189. Now, local receipts are, of course, for any new car purchase that you made or car that you own, you pay an excise tax, of course. Also, our successful joint partnership programs with the town of Hamilton. Those include our joint library, our joint recreation program, Pleasant Pond, and as noted on the slide, a new shared inspectional services arrangement. This program, wherein Hamilton and Wenham will, as described, share the use of our building, plumbing and gas, construction, all the inspectional services that both towns need for public safety and to ensure that there's growth in both towns. That's about $91,000. Net state aid is projected to increase slightly, just about $12,000. And on the revenue side, we're including the use of $750,000 in free cash to balance the operating budget, which is consistent with our approach over the past 3 or 4 fiscal years. Prior to that, we were able to subsidize the tax rate. Since that point in time, we've relied on it to create a balanced budget. And then lastly, the balance of unappropriated free cash is $282,135 if all the other uses are approved. Total free cash this year, for those who might be wondering, is certified at $1.232 million. Okay, town expense summary. Expenditures, $3,715,187, which is an increase of $106,030. Notable drivers of the expense increases include refuse collection and disposal, $21,000. You'll recall we had an abrupt contractual change last year. Regional retirement assessment, plus $60,000. OPEB, or post-employment benefits, up $40,000. We are funding that. Additionally, just a small increase of $10,000 per year. Next year will be $50,000. Last year was $30,000. And rather than do so out of free cash, it's now a budget line item, so we call it out. And then all other expense items are minus $15,000. Salaries, $4,262,961, increase of $207,000. This reflects a 2% COLA, as well as a 2% merit increase for if eligible, for non-union personnel, as well as other contractual increases. Capital expenditures, $172,652, up $23,000, with $255,000 recommended funded through available free cash and water surplus. Which brings us to the school budget. The regional assessment to Wenham, including debt, $10,053,013, which is an increase of $846,835. Overall, the school's budget increases 5.4%. Operating expenses from FY 18 to 19, including a decrease on the projected revenue side of $177,000 for athletic user fee relief. So the assessment to both towns thereby increases 6.9%. After you account for the reduction of excess and deficiency of $221,000, that's sort of akin to schools' free cash, as we talk about on the town side. And what that means to Wenham, taking into consideration those changes, in addition to our school enrollment, is a 9.2% increase year over year, FY 18 to 19, in our school cost. This includes $214,000 based on the enrollment shift alone. Now, when I talk about enrollment shift, most of you are probably aware, but for those who may not be, quite simply, the cost of the school's Wenham share split with Hamilton is roughly 1/3, 2/3, and that's based specifically on the 3-year rolling average enrollment census for students in each town. We have a bit more data on that as well. If we look to the next slide. I'm sorry, yep, no, it is time for that slide, thank you. So to take a closer look at the financial impact of the enrollment shift, since 2013, so over the past 6 years, Wenham's share of the enrollment has increased by 9.8%, nearly 10, while Hamilton's has decreased by 8.3%. To put some absolute numbers on that, because as I mentioned, we have about 1/3 of the student population. Hamilton has about 2/3. Wenham's increased from 571 to 633 over that time, and Hamilton's decreased from 1,224 to 1,122. So the total enrollment over that time period, 1,795 students to 1,755 students. So again, Hamilton's declining, Wenham's is increasing. This is a trend that's been ongoing for several years. Independent of any increases in the regional school district's operating budget, our assessment alone, that shift, our sending more kids to the regional schools, has resulted in a cumulative increase of $1,058,000 that has been part of Wenham's operating budget over the past 4 years. So another way of thinking about that is if you were to hold the school budget perfectly constant, $0 increase, we would still be paying over these past 4 years over $1 million or $265,000 more each year, just to account for our additional students that we're sending to the schools. By comparison, and this is not on the slide, but our levy capacity grows roughly $450,000 naturally from all sources of revenue on an annual basis. So I mentioned early in opening remarks that this is sort of a levy limit capacity utilization issue. We're kind of crowding out the levy limit over the past several years, if you think about most of our excess capacity going towards this. The school operating budget's increased 16.2% or $4 million over the past 4 years, while Wenham's assessment has increased by $2.5 million over the same time. Hamilton's, again, because of their decline in student enrollment census, has declined $1.5 million. Starting with no excess levy capacity in FY18, does anyone recall the number that the moderator stated earlier? It might have jumped out at you as being incredibly minuscule. It was $8. Starting with no excess levy capacity in FY18, Town and Hamilton Wenham Regional School District annual operating expense increases would need to be less than 2.5% for FY19 to stay within the levy limit based on these constraints. So this has been, mounting pressure. It's been well known. It's been discussed a lot for those who have been paying close attention to town operating budget and financial matters for the past few years. And it's why we seek to explain our affordability to the schools as well early on in the process. Okay, this brings us to funding and the article structure, Article 1, and funding the regional school district assessment. So Article 1 includes funding for $515,000 of Wenham's school assessment increase, which is not the full amount. That amount includes or accounts for 2.5% increase from Wenham's FY18 assessment, which is $223,000. This is the breakdown of that $515,000. $214,000 is to cover the enrollment shift, which I mentioned, so the incremental students from Wenham relative to Hamilton in the total, and a reduction in the excess and deficiency funds of $78,000. There's also an increase in school excluded debt, small, of $8,000. Article 3, and I'm jumping past Article 2, of course, we'll revisit it, but it's free cash and relatively straightforward. Article 3 includes the balance. So $331,000 in addition to the $515,000 to fully fund Wenham's assessment for the regional school district, subject to the approval of an operating override by both town meeting here today and on April 12th, this upcoming Thursday, at the ballot. Of course, this gets back to Article 1 being what we can refer to as our levy limit budget, Article 3 our override budget. Structurally, I'd say just a comment, and then I'll speak to the tax rate impact. The question I think I'd also be asking is, why do we have 2 articles for the town's operating budget? Shouldn't it just be 1, as it typically is in most years? Might include auxiliary articles like the use of free cash for $750, but generally speaking, the bulk of the budget is in 1, even in an override year. Now, we haven't had an override vote in nearly a decade, but I think that this is designed to further provide transparency and better inform residents and voters as they make decisions as to the override. It allows you to consider the specific dollar amount or portion of the school district budget that you would not be funding if you did not vote for Article 3 as the override vote. Now, In terms of the tax rate impact, since clearly that's of great importance to all residents, the tax rate impact of Article 1 to stay within the levy limit, and the levy limit being $15,356,231, and our valuation, $792 million, that's the value of all the property, is projected to be $19.38 per thousand valuation, which is an increase of 59 cents per thousand, or 3.1%. Our current tax rate is $18.79. So in terms of the tax bill, on an average, or excuse me, median home value of $520,000, that's $307 for the expected increase. Tax rate impact of Article 3, since the two are certainly interlinked, would be to put the town's budget over the levy limit by $331,294. Of course, the valuation doesn't change, but the tax rate then, therefore, is increased an additional 42 cents. And the breakdown of that is 34 cents per thousand for critical priorities, which Dr. Harvey will discuss, as well as 8 cents per thousand for reduced athletic fees, or 2.2% in the current tax rate of $18.79. The dollar amount, therefore, would be an additional $219 expected on the median home value tax. And then we just combine the two together on the next slide, which is the total tax rate impact of 1 and 3, should both articles pass. So again, we have our current tax rate of $18.79, a levy limit increase from Article 1 of 59 cents, 42 cents for the override, for a total of 101, and an estimated FY20 tax rate, therefore, at $19.80 per thousand. So hopefully that, and the dollar amount increase would be a combined $526. Lastly, and before giving the superintendent time to talk about the school district budget and plans, I'll just provide a recap. So we have the net amount to be raised, the assessment to the town of $15,687,516. This is for combined Article 1 and 3. This puts us over the levy limit. We see prior year, the 2.5% increase, forecast growth, and school override. For the total amount, we have prior Prop 2.5 debt exclusions of $740,984, and our new levy limit, which of course invokes a Prop 2.5 override. That leaves us with our $8 of levy capacity, and given our valuation, the tax rate. So it's providing a little bit more detail than this kind of very summary level tax rate impact slides that were previously shown. So I thank you, and at this point, I'll invite Superintendent Harvey to come and present the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District presentation.
Yep. Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to make sure I thank the Board of Selectmen and Town Administration, members of the Finance Committee, moderator, and of course all of you, the residents, for being out here. And I also want to point out the work of the school committee in putting together this budget. This is a long, thankless process, I think, that they've all gone through, and have questioned their commitment to the school committee sometimes because it's really a hard process to go through. As a district, I'm here to tell you we continue to work to educate students who are of good character and who demonstrate mastery of the knowledge and skills needed to be successful members of our global economy, engaged citizens of the 21st century. It's impossible to do a presentation in the time limits that I have to talk about all the great things that are going on in the district, but I'm going to ask you to indulge me for a little bit to go into some of those things, to talk about some of the highlights for the year. First slide that we're looking at here is actually the statistics from the graduating class of Hamilton Wenham Regional High School for 2017, which was a year ago in June. As you see the numbers of students there, and AP stands for Advanced Placement, which is a set of course offerings that's designed by the College Board. And you can see there that we had about 191 students in the high school who were enrolled in advanced placement courses. Those students, and each of those courses has an exam at the end that students take, and those students took on the average about 2 exams each. And a score of 3 or better is usually considered to be the equivalent of a first-year college level work. And so you can see 80% of those 414 exams were 3 or better.
signifies of the great quality of education that we're giving to our students. And you can see as you go through some of the other honors that are given there, we had 5 students who were National Advanced Placement Scholars who had an average score of 4.61 out of 5 or better on the multiple tests of advanced placement tests. Next one. The next slide shows some of the highlights from our 10th grade Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System test, the MCAS tests. 10th grade test is actually a requirement for a high school diploma in Massachusetts. And you can see in English language arts, and in mathematics, our scores are very strong. For English language arts, we had 97% of our sophomore class last year scoring in the advanced or proficient categories. That's the top 2 out of 4. And in mathematics, 90% of our students scored in the advanced or proficient categories. Again, very strong scores. Next one. We also have students who are excelling in the arts. We have 2 students, Annabelle Howley, who's one of her 2 entries here, and Nora Sullivan Horner both received gold keys from the Boston Globe Scholastic Art Awards this past year. And Annabelle Howley actually had 2 entries that were awarded gold keys by the Globe Art Awards. We also had 3 other students who received honorable mentions in art. Next one, and there's Nora Sullivan Horner's entry this year was a Gold Key Award winner. And then also students had excellence in writing. Raquel Souza was awarded a Gold Key in Critical Essay at the Globe Writing Awards. Luce Brandt and Nora Sullivan Horner also received silver keys for personal essays in writing. 6 members of our school's Distributive Education Clubs of America team, or what we call DECA, qualified to compete at the organization's International Career Development Conference, which will be held next month in Atlanta, Georgia. And as of today, right now, as we're here, 36 students from our middle and high schools are participating in the state National History Day competition. And we had another story that was something that some of you actually may have been in attendance for this year. At Miles River Middle School was actually an international phenomenon. I've actually seen this was picked up by some newspapers in Europe. I've seen it all across the United States. Middle school this year gave a performance of James and the Giant Peach. Happened this January, and if you were there for the Friday night performance, the power went out about 3/4 of the way through the show. Shocker for this year, right? Click one for me, please. But what happened there was actually, as the auditorium was dark, parents, friends, other members of the audience pulled out their cell phones and lit up the stage. And the kids finished the show. And I think that's a great metaphor for what we do as a district and what we do as a community. It's our job to light the way for our students. We show them how to do things right and how to excel in everything that they want to do. And it's great to be in this community that's so supportive of education. Thanks. So on to the budget. So the FY19 school committee budget is based on level service plus some identified enhancements that are critical to maintain the high quality of educational services that the taxpayers of Hamilton and Wenham have come to expect. Level service seeks to maintain current services offered by the district while accounting for anticipated cost increases, which are balanced with any expected cost reductions. These anticipated increases include cost of living adjustments to employee salaries, increases in the cost of employee health insurance premiums, and tuition increases for students who are in out-of-district placements. The net amount needed to maintain level services for FY19 is $1.1 million. We've operated on a level service budget now for the last 2 years. Because of this, any enhancements that we've made to our programs have been achieved at the expense of other existing resources. And doing this is really a positive experience for us. It's forced us to be creative. It's forced us to annually examine what we're doing and decide, is this the best thing that we can do for our students? And if it's not, we make that change. And we've been able to do that within existing resources. However, at this point, we've nearly exhausted those opportunities. So as I said, after 2 years of level service, the FY19 budget includes about $577,000 in funding for critical priorities. And these are for resources to, first off, improve student learning, to develop programming to address the flow of students from the school district into out-of-district special education placements, and then finally to reduce the burden placed on families by high athletic user fees. So the first 4 bullets on this slide actually identify areas, projects and student achievement. And this year we conducted an extensive review of our performance on the newly revised edition of the MCAS test. Through conducting this review, we learned that the resources that we're currently using in mathematics are not well aligned to the state standards tested on these exams. And for example, this is especially the case in the middle school, where there's a website called EdReports, which is like consumer reports for school textbooks. And the book that we're currently using in the middle school has been identified as not aligned at all to the state standards that we're teaching. And so we're asking students to do really well on these tests, and we're expecting high levels of performance, but we're actually not giving them the resources that will help them do that. And so the FY19 budget includes approximately $172,000 in funding for educational resources for teaching mathematics in grades K through 8. And these resources are better aligned to the state curriculum standards, and we're all looking for assessments to help us identify students who are experiencing learning difficulties and remediation tools to help students with these difficulties. These materials will allow our students to be better prepared for more advanced mathematics at the high school. Through making this investment, the district will be able to ensure students are using the most up-to-date learning materials and receiving the best preparation possible for their future. The next to last bullet on this is, shows $177,000 for athletic user fees reduction. And as we all know, I think we can all attest, athletics are an integral part of our high school experience. And this is even more true, we think, for students at the regional, where over 70% of the student body participated in at least one sport in the 16-17 school year. Another more unfortunate truth of athletic participation at the regional is that student athletes and their families pay some of the highest user fees in the state. Current user fees range from around $1,600 per season for ice hockey to over $400 for cross country. And in the FY18 budget, user fees account for 48% of the $727,000 needed to fund the entire athletic budget. After listening to the concerns of members of the community during the budget review process, the school committee decided to add $177,764 to the FY19 budget, and this amount will reduce the funding needed to be raised through user fees by half. And what that will translate into for families is between a 40% and 50% reduction in the user fees that they pay. And then the last, bullets 5 through 8 on this slide are items to address out-of-district placements. And tuitions right now and related transportation costs for students in special education programming that's outside of the district continues to be one of our fastest growing expenses. These tuition costs can run anywhere from $35,000 a year for a student in a day school placement to as high as $250,000 per year for one student for a full-time residential placement. And we have a student that costs that much now. Additionally, the district is required to pay the transportation services to deliver students to and from their educational placements. This cost can run as high as $90,000 per year. In the past 3 years, the number of out-of-district students has increased from 22 in FY14 to 42 in the current year. Go to the next one, okay. One approach to control these costs is to develop in-district programming to meet the needs of these students. While creating programming to meet student needs within our own schools does come at a cost, it is definitely more cost-effective to educate students in district. And so what we're looking at right now is that currently there are cohorts in the students who are being educated at Miles River Middle School who have a specific special education profile, and there are no programs for them that currently exist in the 9th grade at the high school. So therefore, we need to put programs in place to meet the needs of these students in order to avoid more expensive out-of-district placements. And to this end, we've included approximately $240,000 in new funding in the FY19 budget for additional staffing in order to create in-district special education programming to service students with special needs. And through making this investment, our cost analysis shows the potential of over $2.2 million in savings over the next 4 years through avoidance of out-of-district tuitions. And you can see this is what we have a 1.0 life skills program. Actually, can you back up one? Sorry. So we have students in a language-based program. There are 4 sitting in the 8th grade right now that we know of. And what we're looking at is, what the cost for those students would be in an out-of-district placement potentially is $213,000 for next year, as opposed to $61,500 for a staff member to actually teach those students in district. And you can see the other students, we have a census going on right now that we've taken and used to project forward over the next 4 years of students who are currently in the middle school receiving this type of service that will be needed in the high school. And so just for the language-based program, we're looking at a $1.3 million difference in costs over the next 4 years. Next one. And then this is also a life skills program that we're looking at. Again, we've looked at the potential of students who are in district, and we're actually even at this point going to try to bring a student back from an out-of-district placement back to the high school if we're able to put this life skills program into place. And again, for the cost of those educating, you see the difference there year to year between educating those students potentially in out-of-district placements and then the cost for staff in district and creating our own programming. And again, for the life skills program, it's about a $910,000 difference over the 4 years. Thank you. So on to our large budget sheet. Our expenses, as you can see in this budget, so the total budget increase for operating expenses is $1.694 million, or a 5.61% increase. We have a small increase of about $22,000 for our debt service expenses, and that brings us to a total expenditures budget of just over $34 million, which is a $1.716 million increase. Alex actually mentioned it earlier when we looked at towards the center of the sheet, some of the changes to our revenue. There's a $221,000 decrease in our excess and deficiency account. The school committee, like the town, has a free cash funds. Basically, it operates a little differently, but similar. The school committee has a policy that anything over 3% of the total school budget will be returned to the towns in the next school year. Last year, that number for the FY18 budget was $568,000. For this year, it's $347,000 that we're returning, and so that accounts for that $221,000 decrease. So after we account for our total funding sources, our total, my eyes are getting bad. Our net assessment, including debt service, is $28.4 million. Thanks, I might. That's right. So then, as we talked about, it's roughly a 2/3, 1/3 apportionment split over a 3-year rolling average, which pulls Hamilton's assessment to $18.385 million and Wenham's assessment to $10,053,000, which again accounts for overall a 6.9% increase in the assessment. Thank you. And this, again, sort of backs up to some of the presentation that Alex made earlier. Over the past 4 years, the total net assessment to the towns has grown at an average rate of 4.04%. In the same time period, Hamilton's assessment has grown at about 2.25% annually, and Wenham's has grown at 8% annually, and that includes $900,000 of shifting just based on enrollments. Okay, so as we've already talked about, the school committee's budget, the full budget is actually Appendix C in the warrant book. And we've already talked about, there's 2 articles today for the budget, so just to give you an idea of what that all means. If either or both Articles 1 and 3 fail, the school committee's overall budget fails. And then the school committee will have to follow the process outlined in Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B. That basically gives the school committee 30 days to resubmit a budget to the town. And then the town has 45 days from that point to recall town meeting to consider the new number. I also want to point out that Article 1 is actually $128,000 short of level service for the district. And then finally, if the override does not pass, that could mean the school committee would be required to reduce its budget by a total of $935,000 because it's a 2/3, 1/3 share. So Wenham's $358,000 shortfall, I'm sorry, let me get that back. So the total of Hamilton and Wenham would have to reduce its budget by $935,000, which could result in a $358,000 shortfall as compared to level service. Okay. Do you want me to talk about capital later?
No,
Want
I
it
don't
now?
know, I don't know.
It's up to you. It's your call, Madam Moderator. I'm going to give it to you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, now.
So thanks. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fire suppression system at the Winthrop School later on when the item comes up. So thank you all very much.
All right, I think we are back to Alex to read through the budget lines. And again, just as a reminder, if you have just recently come into town meeting and you have not picked up your voter card, please do so. There are plenty of seats up front. If you have any questions as Alex goes through the line items, just call out hold, and we will come back to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sorry. The Finance Committee moves that the town approve the motion under Article 1 as set forth in the list of official motions that are printed on blue paper and as shown on the screen. So as mentioned, I will go through each of the line items, try to stay awake.
Oh, now the fun starts.
And now I'm on page 7 plus of your safety orange warrant books.
What?
And I'll be reading each department and then just the total for that department. Okay. Item 114, moderator, $50. Item 122, selectmen, $13,029. Item 123, town administrator, $134,500. Item 131, finance and advisory committee, $250. Item 132, reserve fund, $125,000. Item 135, town accountant, which is zeroed as it's been moved to the finance department. Item 139, municipal audit, $23,500. And again, if anyone needs to, just shout hold. Item 141, assessors, $76,253. Item 145, treasurer collector, which is zeroed out as it's been also moved to the finance department. Item 149, finance department, $228,728. Item 151, town council legal services, $55,000. Item 155, information technology, $71,014. Item 160, town hall, $169,985. Item 161, town clerk, $90,342. Item 170, planning and land use, $75,277. Item 192, building and grounds, $160,236. Item 195, town report, $5,700. Item 199, iron rail property, $43,443. Next, item 210, police, $1,434,442. Item, I'm sorry, was there a hold? No, sorry. Item 220, fire, $713,992. Item 240, permitting and inspectional services, $156,952. I'd like to call out that if you're following along on page 10, there's another total item below it, 174,952, that's incorrect. So if you're keeping track, 156,952 is the correct one. Item 294, tree warden, 27,460. Item 310, regional school district, 9,708,859. Item 315, regional school debt, $10,053,013. Item 320, regional vocational school district, $160,046. Item 422, highway department, $853,737. Item 423, snow removal, $106,050. Item 424, street lighting, $18,000. 433, refuse collection and disposal, $386,000. Item 491, cemetery, $9,722. Item 510, Board of Health, $33,027. Item 541, Council on Aging, $107,382. Item 543, Veterans Benefits, $23,339. Item 620, Joint Library. It's on the next page, and the total is $941,159. Item 640, Joint Recreation Program, $97,140. Item 650, Parks Department, zeroed out as it was moved to the Police Department. And that's for the Pleasant Pond. Item 691, Historic District Commission, $200. Item 840, Intergovernmental, $20,717. Item 911, Retirement, $728,457. Item 914, Employee Benefits, $645,415. Item 916, FICA and Medicare, $57,856. Item 945, General Insurance, $127,308. Item 991, Other Post-Employment Benefits or OPEB, $40,000, as mentioned earlier. Just a couple more to go. Item 710, this is principal town debt, principal loan totaling $495,000. The interest is item 751, that totals $67,245. And lastly, item 450, the water fund, $427,388. Thank you.
So I heard one hold back on, oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong one, 315. Is there anyone who's going?
Hi, Maureen Weiss, Kimball Ave. Just a quick question and clarification, and maybe Superintendent Harvey might be talking about this, but in 315, when it talks about the sprinkler and infrastructure budget line item of 8,800, how does that relate to the debt exclusion in Article 4?
So I believe, thank you for the question. I believe, and I'll seek clarification on this as well. So the line item of $8,838, winter sprinkler and infrastructure, I believe that's the debt associated with it. Should Article 4, is this Article 4 related, Peter? I'm kind of looking to you, and I think he's best.
It's related
Thanks,
to the
Dr. Harvey.
bands.
So as earlier on I said, there's about a $22,000 increase overall in the debt expense for the district. That $22,000 is actually what we would figure to be putting out with bond anticipatory notes to pay for it's basically a construction loan for those projects. And so that would be Wenham's share of that $22,000 is roughly $8,000.
Got it. Thank you. So the full debt would be issued later, bond anticipation notes earlier.
Probably wouldn't be issuing the debt until
FY20 for the debt. Thank you, Dr. Harvey. Does that answer the question? If others related to this, please approach the microphone.
All right. Is there anyone else? Okay. So, seeing no others, all in favor of the budget that just was read by Alex, all in favor, please raise your blue card. Okay, thank you. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, I call that Article 1 passed unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to Article 2. Article 2 seeks to use $750,000 in available certified free cash as revenue source to balance the FY 2019 budget. This funding must be approved to cover the budgeted FY 2019 expenses improved in Article 1. Alex, motion please.
Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 2 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 2? Seeing none. All of those in favor of Article 2 to use free cash to balance the budget, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, Article 2 passes. Unanimous. Article 3 is Hamilton Wenham Regional School District operating expense. As outlined earlier by Alex, this article seeks to fully fund the balance of Wenham's share of the FY 2019 Hamilton Wenham Regional School District budget. Approval of both Article 1 and this article are required to allocate the requisite funds for the FY 2019 budget that was adopted by the school committee. A reminder that even if this article is approved by town meeting, it must also be approved by the ballot here in Wenham this coming Thursday, April 12th. If fully approved, the town's levy limit will be permanently increased by $331,294. Failure to approve this article will trigger a statutory process whereby the school committee has 30 days to reconsider, amend, and resubmit a new budget, which town meeting would then be called upon to act. Before Mr. Bagan makes the motion, I will note that both the Selectmen and the Finance and Advisory Committee unanimously do not recommend favorable action on this article. Alex.
Finance and Advisory Committee moves that, sorry. Just hold on a second. Yeah, sure.
Excuse me. Talk amongst yourselves. There's a number on it. Yeah. So it's Article 1 and 1 and 3? Oh, why'd you come to us? Come on. I'm totally kidding. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. It's in the booklet. So I think it's which is different than this one.
You read 302, which is exactly the entire.
So you're saying that would trump this, the legislative language?
He already voted it out. Once you appropriate the money for town meeting, included. Article 3.
Oh, I thought this. So I see that number in there, but I thought that this is the official legislative language that trumps the backup data. No?
It's up to the town council. The town council is going to evaluate it.
Okay.
But I'll need to clarify with some.
All right, so we're back. So Article 3, wait a minute. We are proceeding with Article 3, the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Operating Expense Override. So all those in favor of Article 3, please raise your... I'm sorry.
There's going to be a discussion on Article 3. It's Alex's turn.
I'm so sorry. Alex.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will make the motion for Article 3, and then I'll explain what we were just talking about. The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 3 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen. Certainly we'll have discussion about Article 3. What we were just covering is when I read through the line items in your warrant books, the debt for the school, we did not represent correctly. We represented the full amount, apparently, for Article 1. So we will revisit Article 1, that amount, and we'll explain very carefully. It needs to be explained to me very carefully as well. We will revisit that after Article 3. The Article 1 will remain the levy limit budget, but we need to provide clarification on one of the school debt line items that appears to be inclusive of all of the debt when it needn't be. Sorry? The full amount in the operating budget, yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll provide full clarification. Thanks for your patience, but we're not going to do that right this second. We're going to address Article 3. So the motion has been made, and we're happy to provide discussion on that as well.
So now we're just talking about Article 3. The motion has been made. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Josh Lebo, the chair of the school committee. Just wanted to commend the finance committee, as well as the selectmen and town administrator. I think that the overview provided by Alex was probably the most straightforward one you could get in a really tough way to explain it, given the environment we're in. We've known, as Alex said, for a while now that we were going to be facing an override in the town. It was something that the school committee took into account very heavily when we were making the recommendation for the budget. Our process is a very long process. We start in October, and it goes all the way through to now to town meeting. There is a long list of items that we would like to include in the budget, and we did not, given the fiscal constraints of the town and the district as a whole. I would say when I look at the budget, very objectively, there's really three buckets that it fits into. One, level services. I think Dr. Harvey talked about that. Any cut to level services means a cut in programs. A cut in programs means a cut in the quality of the education at the school. Just because enrollment of a district is going down, if a class goes from 20 to 18 kids, you can't cut a teacher because you have one teacher in a classroom. That's cutting a program. That is the biggest line item when you look at level services. It's COLA for salaries and the teachers and staff that are operating the schools. We have the same infrastructure for 1,000 kids as we would for 900 kids. The second part that I look at is really what the administration has done to try to control costs going forward. The level service budget, there are a lot of uncontrollable costs. Out-of-district placements is a large one for us. I think the administration of the school district did a great job in looking at ways to cut future costs from the budget. So while we are paying today, we are saving in the future, and I think that was hopefully very transparent as Dr. Harvey went through the slides on what we're doing specifically for special education. And then the third part of it is, I like to think of it as really community activism. There was a lot of community involvement, some very articulate speeches and discussions at the school committee level regarding user fees at the school district. The amount of burden on parents in the town and on the kids to participate in sports, which accounts for over 70% of the students at the high school, is unbelievable. Talking $1,600 for hockey, cross country costs $400. I mean, you run around the woods, I'm not sure, there's no sneakers included. And so we tried to be very cognizant of that and took that into account when we were making the budget. We didn't cut their user fees completely, but we brought them more in line with surrounding communities and more in line with the state as well. So I would implore everyone to really think carefully about how they vote with regards to Article 3. As Dr. Harvey mentioned, it does not meet our level service budget alone in Article 1, and again, that would mean a cut in programs. So appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please go to the mic.
Hi, I'm Angus West from Walnut Road in Wenham, and I just had a question. Really, it's part of the base school budget for Dr. Henry, I guess. I understand it's a $1.7 million, 6.9% increase overall on the $34 million school budget. The $1.7 million increase you were explaining, they split into two parts, the level service and the critical priorities. In those two $1.7 million increase buckets, if I add together the salary and benefits increase, that's about half, 700,000 salary and 143 health. Just for us townspeople to understand, because what the reps were talking about earlier is how health benefits are chewing up most of what people would get in pay increases across the state. Just want to be sure that our teachers, who are fabulous, however, are feeling the same scrutiny as to their benefits relative to their wages. So could you just comment on overall costs of our excellent teacher staff? How is that rising over time? Because it looks like it's a very big number if it's half of the 6.9% increase we're feeling this year.
Anyone from the school district? Okay.
A couple of pieces to that. So first off, one of the things that we enjoy was relative to health insurance. We enjoy as a district. Our teachers are not necessarily so enthused about this. Our health insurance cost share is 60% paid for by the district, 40% paid for by the individual teacher. I don't know how that compares to Wenham. I believe Wenham is probably closer to 70-30 split, where the town is actually paying a higher percentage of our health insurance. And right now we're looking at about a 6% increase for next year in our health insurance benefits overall. As far as the salaries go, we are a personnel-intensive organization. So out of that $34 million budget, roughly $24 million of that is salaries. And right now, I can't go into the exact details on this because all of our major employee union contracts are actually up at the end of this year, so we're engaged in negotiations. So with our teachers, with our office personnel, and with our custodians. So we have a placeholder in there, but I can't actually give that number because it would betray our bargaining position with relative to our unions. So.
Can we comment on historical, like the last 3 years, or historical for salary, overall salary increase?
Historical, so the teachers for the last 3 years have had a 2.5% cost of living increase, which is the same as our secretaries and office personnel.
Sir, yes, sir in the back.
Yes, Tom Lancaster, Lartro. Just I can't tell how to vote on this. I know it looks like there's some dissension on who wants to vote for this, but I've only been here in Wenham for about a year and a half, myself and my family. We've got 2 kids that go to Bucher. Another one will be in Bucher in another couple years. Just a little story. We lived in Stoneham for about 10 years before we moved to Wenham. And this sounds eerily familiar to the beginning of what happened in Stoneham. I don't know if there's anyone else that lived in Stoneham over the last decade. This is sort of what happened in Stoneham. Stoneham started out, weren't able to make the level budget, came up for overrides on levies. People recommended, voted them down, and it started happening year over year. And it got to the point where user fees were very high. And what ended up happening is actually it started with the athletic teachers left, then some of the other teachers left the school district. The school's reputation took a big hit while we were there. And frankly, that was one of the reasons why we moved from Stoneham to Wenham. So I'll put that out there. Number 2 is actually home values actually took a big hit. And it was over and above the housing market crash around 2008 or whatever. But year over year, when they went to reassess after they lost a lot of the teachers, when they didn't fund level services in Stoneham, the housing value in Stoneham went down dramatically. So can't tell everyone how to vote. I know everyone's pocketbooks are tight, but I just want to give that little bit of story because it sounds very eerily familiar of the beginning of what happened when we lived in Stoneham. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else before we vote? Janice?
Yes.
Please address me. Thank you.
I was trying to. Sorry.
Name and address?
Janice Bertrand, 28 Perkins Street. I would encourage you to vote for this. I know I'm a member of the school committee, and I have sort of a biased opinion, but we've worked very hard on this. We've tried to keep in mind the tax rate and the debt that we're all carrying and the tightness of our pocketbooks. I would tell you that 8 of the people who sit on the school committee do live in Wenham and do pay the property taxes and are very much aware of what this does to somebody's wallet. But I would also tell you what would happen if we were to lose this vote and we weren't able to implement the things that Dr. Harvey and Jeff have managed to do in keeping with our costs down. The special needs, trying to keep that cost under control even though it's skyrocketing. New textbooks that we've needed for a while that we haven't wanted to. We want to make sure that we're giving our students the very best, and this does this without overburdening people, I believe. I would hope that you will support this, and I thank you very much.
All right, great. Oh, I see one more standing up. Slowly.
Old man noises. Okay. Alex Chapetis, Morgan Street. I just wanted to say that when I hear level services, I'm trained to hear status quo, and I think the school board has demonstrated that they've been responsible custodians of the budget that they've allocated. Excuse me. And it's a nominal sum when you look back over the years when we talk about level services. The responsibility of the school board is material. Sorry. Okay. The responsibility of the school board is material. It's a nominal investment, and change accelerates. We need to prepare our kids for the change that they're dealing with. And this is not a problem. We can kick this can down the road, but it'll come up again next year, and the year after, and the year after, and it's only going to get bigger and worse and harder. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one more hand.
Hi, Ruth Bosler, 7 Monument. It's my understanding that there are, well, I'm going to start by saying at the risk of opening up a can of worms, it's my understanding that there are 48 students from Gordon Conwell, parents attending Gordon Conwell that are now enrolled in our district. And it's also my understanding that Gordon Conwell has reneged on their pilot program, which I know it's in Hamilton, so I know technically it's a Hamilton issue, but it does affect the regional district. So I'm wondering if the selectmen have heard anything from the Hamilton selectmen about possibly trying to renegotiate with Gordon Conwell regarding their reneged upon pilot program.
It comes up every year. We can't force them. There is dialogue. Hamilton selectmen feel the same way we do. The dialogue doesn't go anywhere, and that disappointingly.
All right, if there's no one else, we...
If I may.
Sure.
So I'll stand when addressing everybody, and this isn't to have the last word, I promise, and perhaps it'll even encourage more questions on Article 3 in discussion dialogue. But if I were sitting in your shoes, I would probably, I don't like speaking in public, but I'd probably approach the microphone and ask why the Finance and Advisory Committee has voted unanimously in terms of recommending unfavorable action on Article 3. So that's what I will do, because I feel I'm doing a tremendous disservice to you all as being FinCom chair and the rest of FinCom by not at least explaining at a summary level why we've made this recommendation. And this may or may not encourage additional questioning or discussion or comments from residents, but that's what we're here for. If we spend however many hours until we get to this point, not to diminish the importance of the other items. So taking a step back, Article 3 is our override budget, and in no way is FinCom preset or take any sort of upfront stance on overrides as they relate to the school as a negative. We are stewards of your taxpayer dollars, but we also recognize that we have, as a community, an outstanding educational system, and we need to maintain it, keep it current, enhance it, and give the administration and the school committee the power and tools that they need to keep this, again, exceptional educational institution. We also need to manage our town's needs. And we need to do both of those things, striking a balance with the affordability and the fact that we simply don't have unending revenue and resources. We have a predominantly, as you well know, residential tax base. And so the burden that this potentially puts on all taxpayers is quite large. A 5% tax increase is quite large. Now, as it relates to the school override vote and the items presented therein for your consideration, there are a couple things to keep in mind. One, you're being asked to pay more in tax revenue for specific items in the school. Many of those in our multi-hour-long deliberations in open FinCom meetings, some with the Board of Selectmen, are largely supported by the FinCom. In particular, as Dr. Harvey stated, the efforts by the school administration to bolster the in-house special education capabilities of the district to help curtail the out-of-control cost increases year over year for out-of-district placement is absolutely a move in the right direction. I'm not a professional educator. By no means am I in a position, nor I think is the rest of FinCom, to state whether or not they're exactly the right moves, or 2 FTEs versus 3, or what have you. And we appreciate the additional information that underlies their cost savings assumptions and the methodology that they're thinking this through. There are some things, though, that I think we, as FinCom members, and I'm speaking generally because it was a unanimous vote, and I will not try to represent every member's thoughts and opinions on this matter perfectly, but to summarize, one of the issues that we take is with the athletic user fee reduction of $177,000. Now, I need to step back and just say, as FinCom members, we're not opposed to overrides for the school in general. And as FinCom members, many of which, several of us have children who are students, who are athletes, we're not opposed to user fee reductions either. In fact, I personally acknowledge, even though I learned of this more recently, that they're clearly an issue and need to be dealt with and addressed. My 10-year-old daughter has played 4 games in the past 24 hours. So I'm a sports dad. I completely understand the benefits of sports in our community, and I support all of those parents of student athletes who see this benefit in it for their children, who make sacrifices, not just in terms of pickup and drop-off and dollar amounts paid to the administration alike for the user fees. However, the manner in which it was brought into the school budgets rather late in the game, I simply personally can't support, because it's 1/3 of the school district's ask, $577,000 all in, $177,000 of that, 30%, is for user fee reduction. Is this the right amount? I'm not certain. Should it be greater relief or lesser relief? I'm not certain. But what we don't have is a really thorough analysis of the considerations given to this as to whether or not this is the right balance to strike between that which a parent pays for his or her child to play a sport and that which the tax base at large pays. There was an excellent showing of support at the school committee, impassioned parents of students who play sports who did a phenomenal job of stating why we need to fix this problem of user fees that are simply too high. One of the asks was for the school to sharpen their pencils and to find other places where this could be funded from, or consider alternatives. And in my view, and I believe that of the Finance Advisory Committee, that was not served with the openness, transparency, and thoughtful deliberation that at a minimum it would command in asking for a significant add to the school's budget, recognizing that we're under tremendous fiscal pressure and that we're likely up against an operating override anyway. So, running the risk of droning on forever here, so I'll leave it at that, and I want to hopefully have offered somewhat of a balanced view, and some may agree, some not. I'd always invite the rest of FinCom to counter me or support those kind of thoughts that I shared with you, and like I said, maybe it will spur additional questions or comments from residents. Thank you very much.
I'd like to move the question.
All right. I've heard a motion to move the question. So in doing so, we will move directly to the vote of Article 3. No? I'm sorry, I have to take a vote on the motion. All of those in favor of the motion to move the question, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All of those opposed to moving the question? It's more than 2/3, so I call that we will move straight to the vote. Article 3, Hamilton Wenham Regional School District Operating Expense Override. All of those in favor, please raise your card. Okay, those opposed? It's just a majority. No, I'm pretty comfortable that Article 3 passed by the majority. Oh, I need to call on Alex. We're going to go back to Article 1.
Okay, back to Article 1. This is relatively straightforward, I'm told, and again, I apologize for having to do so, but we are going to I will move to reconsider Article 1 because I need to correct the appropriation for schools under line item 310. I move to reconsider Article 1 in order to correct the appropriation for schools under line 310.
So with what we've just heard, all those in favor, please, of the motion to reconsider, please raise your card.
Point of order.
310. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, I move. Take a motion from Alex. I'm sorry, yes. So Alex, now make the motion.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I move to reduce the amount appropriated under Article 1 under line 310 by the sum of $331,294 to $9,377,565 to reflect the amount subject to the override under Article 3.
All of those in favor of, thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, I call that Article 1. Motion, I'm sorry. That was decided unanimously. I didn't know if I had to say it. Okay, all right. You know what? I had it so easy last year. I mean, we just zipped right through these. So now we are on to Article 4, the debt exclusion for Winthrop School Fire Suppression System. This article seeks to approve the insurance of $850,000 in debt that has been authorized by the Regional School Committee for the installation of a new fire suppression system at the Winthrop Elementary School, and to exempt that borrowing from Proposition 2.5. Based on Wenham's assessment, according to the terms of the district agreement, the town will be responsible for approximately 1/3 of the total project cost, in line with the percentage of Wenham students enrolled in the district. Note that since Wenham is a member of a regional school district, a 2/3 majority vote for debt insurance is required of the school committee, while town meeting's approval requires a simple majority. Similar to Article 3, even if this article is approved by town meeting, it must also be approved at the ballot here in Wenham this coming Thursday. Ms. Jasmine, I'll call on you.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 4 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments? No. All right, just wanted to, all right. Seeing none, all of those in favor of Article 4, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing just a few, I move that Article 4 pass by the majority. Article 5, debt exclusion, Hamilton Wenham Regional School District safety, accessibility, and critical infrastructure. This article seeks to approve $2.6 million in regional school district borrowing for various priority capital improvement projects outlined earlier by Dr. Harvey. Again, the town will be responsible for approximately 1/3 of the total project cost of this borrowing, in line with the percentage of Wenham students enrolled in the district. I am going to call on, wait a minute.
No, I need to do it.
Can he make the move? Oh, I'm sorry.
We need to make
I'm
a
sorry.
motion to pass over it.
I'm going to call on Carrie from the FinCom.
I move that town meeting pass over Article 5. This article is related to the school district. Both towns need to pass school-related articles, and because Hamilton did not pass this article, we recommend passing over it and proceeding to Article 6.
Okay. All right, so we need to vote on this, correct, to pass over? No. Okay, is there any discussion on this motion to pass over Article 5? Okay, so we're going to take a vote to pass over. So all those in favor to pass over Article 5, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing several, I call that Article 5 motion passed over in the majority. Moving right along to Article 6, use of free cash to fund FY 2019 capital improvement program. This article proposes $200,500 in appropriations for this year's portion of the town's 5-year capital improvement program that identifies facility, equipment, and infrastructure needs across all town departments. While some ongoing capital obligations are included in the FY 2019 operating budget, this year's program includes the additional priority items listed in the warrant to be funded through free cash. As a result of new state legislation, town meeting approval is now required on all lease-to-own agreements, which is why this article will have two separate motions, the second of which requires a 2/3 majority for approval. I'm going to call on Mr. Therian.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 6A be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen. The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 6B be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Any questions or comments on Article 6? Seeing none, if we're ready to vote, please raise your card for Article 6. All of those in favor? Thank you. All of those opposed to Article 6? I see one. So I declare Article 6 passes by the 2/3 majority. 6A. So we've got a second motion for 6B. Okay, so that was just on 6A. All right, so we need a motion for 6A from the FinCom. I'm sorry, 6B. That's what I thought. I heard.
Would you like me to read it again? Okay, I'm going to just do it again.
Okay, so we're done.
Okay.
Do we need 2 votes, or does that cover both of them?
Just read it again.
No.
No, you have to read the 6B motion.
Yeah.
For 6B?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 6B approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen. I messed you up. I apologize.
Thank you for the motion on 6B. All of those, are any questions or comments? All right, seeing none. On motion 6B, please raise your blue card in favor. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, motion 6B passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to Article 7, the Water Department capital expenditure. Funding for this last capital item is required from the water surplus account and as such requires a separate vote. The Water Commission is seeking to purchase a new 1-ton utility truck, one of 2 vehicles in the Water Department fleet with these funds. Mr. Therian, could you please make the motion?
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 7 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 7? What is the total dollar figure? It's, is it 55,000 that's in the official motion? 55,000. And it will be, yeah, 55,000. Any other questions? All of those in favor of Article 7, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, Article 7 passes unanimously. Article 8, creation of water capital reserve account and transfer from water operating budget. This article establishes a water capital reserve fund and seeks to transfer $35,000 from the FY 2019 Water Department capital line into this new account. Future appropriations from this reserve fund can only be made with the approval of town meeting. Mr. Purdy, could you please make the motion?
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 8 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 8? Yes.
The difference between...
Name and address again, please.
Sorry, Janice Bertrand, 28 Perkins Street. The difference between this reserve account and the other reserve accounts floating around town is, if one of the selectmen could answer that. the town has free cash and it has other revolving accounts. Difference being,
So this is a capital reserve account that's specifically for water capital projects, and it's reserved for infrastructure projects that the town would undertake, and funding can only be appropriated out of this fund with the approval of town meeting in future fiscal years.
Seeing no one else, all of those in favor of Article 8, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, Article 8 passes unanimously. Article 9, revolving funds. This article incorporates the Iron Rail Rental Revolving Fund that was approved by town meeting last year into the town's bylaws. A reminder that these funds are available for expenditure solely for the purpose of maintaining and making necessary capital repairs to the facility located at 91 Grapevine Road. This article also seeks to establish a new water mitigation revolving fund and to transfer $20,900 in water surplus funds already collected for this purpose into this new fund. Finally, the article sets use restrictions on these two revolving funds, as well as annual expenditure limitations on all revolving funds, which can be amended in future years with the approval of town meeting. Mr. Purdy for the motion, please.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 9 be approved as printed in the list of official motions as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 9? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your card. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, Article 9 passes unanimously. Article 10, cemetery and other trust funds. I am going to call on David from the FinCom to make the motion, please.
The Finance Committee moves that Articles 10 through 13 be approved as printed in the last of the official motions and as shown on the screen.
Is this part of it? Okay, so any questions on Article 10? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please raise your voter card. Okay.
The motion was to do all three.
Anyone opposed to Article 10, please raise your card. I'm getting looks and stares, I'm sorry.
It was for 10 through 13.
We just decided to do one at a time. Sorry about that. They're so quick, we'll just move right through them. Okay. So I didn't see anybody oppose. Was there any? Okay, so moving right along, Article 10 is a unanimous vote. Article 11 is Cemetery Maintenance Trust Fund Transfer. David.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 11 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Article 11. All of those in favor, please raise your voter card. Thank you. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, Article 11 passes unanimously. Article 12 is Road Work Chapter 90 funding. David again.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 12 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Any questions or comments on Article 12? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please raise your card. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, Article 12 passes unanimously. Article 13 is rescission of authorized but unissued debt. David.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 13 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Any questions on Article 13? All of those in favor, please raise your card. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, Article 13 passes unanimously. Article 14 is the authorized borrowing of the iron rail capital needs. This article seeks to authorize $245,000 in borrowing to pay for several major capital projects at the iron rail facility that have been identified as a priority by the Iron Rail Commission, including the installation of a new roof and some paving work. Annual payments for this debt insurance require a 2/3 majority vote for approval, but payments will be made from the Iron Rail Rental Revolving Fund and so should have no impact on the tax rate. Carrie.
The Finance and Advisory Committee moves that Article 14 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Are there any questions or comments on Article 14? Oh, I thought he is.
Hi, Paul Gamber, Juniper Street. Just wanted to find out if the improvements to Iron Rail driveway and parking, if anybody knows, if it's improvements to the parking lot that leads over to the athletic fields, over by the soccer fields, if that's included in the expenses.
No. Go ahead.
Paul, thanks for the question. I had the same one when we were talking about it. I believe the answer is no, it does not include. So the gravel that was recently regraded, but sort of when you turn in, it's basically everything that was paved before, I think. So I believe that the paving includes that little circle there right off Grapevine, but not the up to the sports shack there. That's correct. Thank you for clarifying.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor of Article 14, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing one, we need a 2/3, so I call that Article 14 passed by the 2/3 majority vote. Article 15 is CP appropriations. This article proposes appropriation to the Community Preservation Act budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I will now call on Harriet Davis, Chair of the CPC, for the report of the Community Preservation Committee and to make the motions under Article 15. Thank you, Harriet.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to introduce the members of the CPC. Kenan Anderson, Dennis Curran, Arthur Burt, Barbara Locke, Virginia Rogers, Tom Starr, Leo Mastronzi, Patrick Waddell, and of course our coordinator, Jackie Bresnahan. CPA was enacted in Wenham over 10 years ago in 2005. The statute requires that the funds collected by the 3% surcharge on our taxes, minus the first $100,000 evaluation per parcel, be allocated for the following purposes: open space and recreation, historic resources, and community housing, which we call affordable here, plus modest CPC administrative needs, with at least 10% of projected annual revenues reserved for those three areas. State matching funds are also received annually, although they're radically reduced from the 100% in the early years to now approaching 15%, as more communities join the program and split the pool of funds, specifically Boston. We held a hearing earlier in the year to gather input from the community on the needs for CPC funds, and then discussed how best to maximize our $2 million fund. We started looking at how we had allocated funds in the past. It's worth noting that so far, 0 funds have been spent for open space and affordable housing, although we've made sizable grants to recreation, mostly for the pool and for various playgrounds at Bucher, Winthrop, and Pingree, and to the historic resource category, mostly for the debt service for the renovation of our town hall. The CPC continues to believe it's important to reserve most of our funds for open space, should a parcel come available, and for affordable housing, to get Wenham over the 10% level to avoid future 40B developments. This year we had 4 applications, as we did last year, and we recommend today funding them all to a certain extent, but not without much discussion and less than unanimous votes. Final votes were taken on January 25, 2018. If all of the following motions pass, we'll have spent about $230,000, which is essentially what we did last year, which will leave us still with our $2 million for future applications. So now I would like to read you those motions. And the first motion has three parts, which I'll read all as, together. The Community Preservation Committee moves that the town vote to transfer from fiscal year 2019 CPC estimated annual revenues the total sum of $117,000 as follows. $39,000 to the Historic Resource Reserve, $39,000 to the Open Space and Recreation Reserve, and $35,000 to the Community Housing Reserve. We also vote to transfer the sum of $265,500 from fiscal year 2019 CPC Fund estimated annual revenues to the fiscal year 2019 Community Preservation Fund budgeted reserve. And finally, the CPC moves that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $7,500 from fiscal year 2019 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues to the Community Preservation Committee for fiscal 2019 administrative costs. So we can have a vote now.
Yep. Any discussions on the motion that Harriet just made?
Ed Bertrand, 28 Perkins Street in Wenham. My take on this is if we're not going to actually spend money on low-income housing, which is of desperate need here in town, then we should put the kibosh on these other transfers, because what this looks like to me is we're kicking money down the road and we're saying, all right, well, we're waiting for a parcel to come up so we can spend big money on that.
We have no choice, sir. We are obligated by the statute that we adopted in 2005 to put 10% of expected annual revenues into each of the three categories that I read.
Okay, so this is required by law, but we're
Correct.
still not doing the job of actually funding community housing.
We can only fund applications. We have yet to receive an application.
Okay. So have you bothered to go out and look for applications? Have you solicited applications? Have you made an effort to go and say, we want to get above this?
Excuse me.
We have had...
Excuse me, Mr. Bertrand?
Yes.
Just address your questions regarding this particular motion.
Okay, so my issue is on this, that we should not be, we have to make these minimal transfers, but it looks like everything else is beyond what's necessary, and I would say vote no. Because we're going beyond what we need to be doing as a town, and we're not doing what we should be doing. So that's my.
Do you want to address that, Lauren? I mean, she's wrong. We have to do this.
Do we need any further clarification on this based on what Harriet has provided to us on what the statute requires? Okay. So on Harriet's motion, all of those in favor, please raise your voter card. What did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Two things, Michelle Bailey, 2 Remington Road. First of all, I believe this is statutory that we have to set aside 10%, so voting no, it really doesn't do anything. But I would take issue that we're not doing anything to address affordable housing. As a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, we've gone throughout the year through a very deliberative process, and we've included many of the townspeople in a process of looking at an action plan, and we will be solidifying that at our meeting this Wednesday and bringing that to the Board of Selectmen in May. And we do have a plan going forward, which will include soliciting to address affordable housing. So it is not that we are not doing anything, it's that it's been a very deliberative process in looking at how we will do this. And it's possible that in future years we will ask the CPA to partner with the Affordable Housing Trust to address those issues.
Thank you. Next.
Ken Whitaker, 17 on Road. Harriet, I'm not sure I heard you correctly. Did you say there's a 15% match now?
It's forecast to be as low as that.
Maybe it's time to start thinking about getting out of this.
That's another issue that we can certainly address.
Just wanted to make the comment.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no others, those in favor of the motion of 1A, 1B, and 1C, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, this is a unanimous vote on this particular motion. Harriet.
Okay. We have the four major applications this year where we are actually spending money. Motion 2A. The Community Preservation Committee moves that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $2,500 from the Community Preservation Fund balance to the Town of Wenham Cemetery Commission for the purpose of the Fairfield Cemetery Restoration Project, as described in detail in the application submitted to the Community Preservation Committee, including all incidentals and related expenses. Any discussion, any questions on this one? Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take a vote on that motion. All of those in favor, please raise your card. Thank you.
Okay,
Wait. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, motion 2B for our other cemetery. The Community Preservation Committee moves that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $9,500 from the Community Preservation Fund balance to the Town of Wenham Cemetery Commission for the Main Street Cemetery Gravestone Preservation Project, as described in detail in the application submitted to the Community Preservation Committee, including all incidental and related expenses.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all of those in favor of motion 2B, please raise your card. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, motion 2B passes unanimously. Continue, Harriet.
Okay. Motion 2C. The Community Preservation Committee moves that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $46,009.87 from the Community Preservation Fund balance reserved for historic resources and the sum of $87,240.13 from the Community Preservation Fund balance for a total of $133,250 for the purpose of paying fiscal year 2019 debt service on the $2,151,421 supplemental borrowing for the rehabilitation of our 164-year-old Wenham Town Hall building located at 138 Main Street.
Are there any questions to the motion 2C? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. One more, I believe, Harriet.
Okay. Motion 2D. The Community Preservation Committee moves that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $89,455 from the Community Preservation Fund balance as a grant to the Wenham Museum for the preservation of the historic Claflin Garrish Richards House, located at 132 Main Street, Wenham, Massachusetts, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a grant agreement with the Museum Board of Trustees upon such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen shall deem appropriate, and to authorize said board to accept a preservation restriction in such property.
Any questions or comments on this motion? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed, please raise your card. Seeing none, motion 2D passes unanimously. Thank you, Harriet. Moving on to Article 16, Special Legislation Appropriation and Authorized Borrowing, Longfellow Road and South Street. The residents of Longfellow Road and South Street want to make permanent repairs to their private ways. Given the significant public safety concerns about the ravine on Longfellow Road, the town sought to include stabilization of the slope in this area as part of the scope of the work for this project. Although the town is seeking permission to issue a total of $302,450 in debt for this project based on the estimates we have received to date, The town only plans to contribute $60,000 in funding for this work from available overlay surplus. The balance of the project's cost will be covered by the residents of Longfellow Road and South Street through betterments that will be assessed on their tax bills once the project is complete. This article authorizes the Board of Selectmen to petition the state legislature for approval of this arrangement. Similar to Article 14, although it will not impact the tax rate, since passage of this article technically necessitates debt insurance, a 2/3 majority vote is required for approval. I call on Select Person Catherine Harrison for the motion, please. Mm-mm.
Trying from here. The Board of Selectmen moves that Article 16 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and as shown on the screen.
Is there anyone who would like to? Yes, someone in the back.
Linda Medeiros, 15 Longfellow Road. Just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce this issue with a little bit more detail before it's voted on. For those of you who are not familiar with Longfellow Road and South Street, they are both very narrow, dead-end streets in the Pleasant Pond neighborhood. Our neighborhood has approximately 20 homes. Most of them are mostly small cottages that at one time were used primarily as summer homes. And several of the homes on South Street in the neighborhood use Longfellow Road for access. So cars actually cannot travel in the opposite direction on either of these roads. One car must actually pull over to the side or into someone else's driveway if another car is coming in the opposite direction. And one section of the road actually goes up a hill and has a very steep drop-off of approximately 40 feet from the road, and we call that area the ravine, and it's not protected by a guardrail. And other than potholes and holes being filled, no work has actually been done on this road since 1991. And over the past several years, some of the residents began to express some concerns about the deteriorating road conditions and approached the town for some assistance on how we might repair it. And at that time, the town made it very clear to us that due to the safety concerns, particularly at the ravine, that any project would need to include repair, significant repair at the ravine. And in October of 2016, the DPW, the police chief, and the fire chief all submitted letters to the town administrator expressing significant concerns about the safety of the road at the ravine. And in particular, it related to the lack of the guardrail, but also some emerging signs of possible erosion of the slope. So by the spring of 2017, just about a year ago, a majority of the residents had agreed that we really could no longer keep ignoring the safety issues, and we began our efforts to work with the town to try to figure out how we were going to solve this. And that included that the residents had to retain and fund an engineering company to do a survey and make recommendations as to how exactly we would fix the area at the ravine, and that was sort of an upfront cost that the residents assumed of about $24,000. So the major hurdle that the residents have with this project is the substantial scope of the work that needs to be done and the high cost involved. And without the town's support and guidance, even just to getting us to this point and to identifying a firm that could do an engineering study, this project would not be possible for us to do. We really do need the town's management expertise as a project manager to oversee the project and address sort of the scale of the work that needs to be done. And we also do need the support of the town, particularly in terms of doing this by way of a betterment assessment, where they are funding the cost up front and we are then paying it through a betterment assessment that we would be able to amortize over a period of approximately 20 years for most of us. Particularly for the homes above the ravine, which are about 12, the range of cost per home is going to be approximately $11,000 up to $22,000 per home to do the project. So we also really needed and greatly appreciated the town administrator's assistance in working with us to develop a formula and how we were going to allocate this cost amongst all of us because that was another stumbling block that really was an impediment to getting this done. So at this time, we are on board and support the project, and we do hope the town will vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Yes, sir.
Hi, Lawrence Oak, 19 Longfellow Road. And I'm not going to repeat what Linda said. She did a great job. But it's just to let you know that the whole operation of the betterment, when we went to the town, and they graciously accepted, listened to us, and the whole thing worked out. And to be able to pay for it, you know, like not ask you people to pay for everything, but to be able to contribute over a course of time makes it really doable, as this whole meeting has been about the pocketbook, you know. So I just urge, or ask, I don't urge anything really, I just ask that you support us. Because an improvement to any section of town is an improvement to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? It appears we are ready to vote on Article 16, authorizing special legislation appropriation and barring Longfellow Road and South Street as all set forth in the warrant. All of those in favor, please raise your card. All of those, I'm sorry, thank you. All of those opposed? Seeing a few, I call that Article 16 passed by the majority. I'm sorry, 2/3 vote. It was 2/3. Article 17, zoning bylaw adoption of marijuana establishment ban. Town Council Lauren Goldberg is now going to give a brief presentation outlining the interrelated issues that will be covered in Articles 17 through 20, including what local regulations the town can impose according to the Act to ensure safe access to marijuana. Mrs. Goldberg, thank you.
Madam Moderator, through you. So because the next 4 articles all relate to the new law approved by the legislature last year relative to marijuana, we thought it would be useful to explain the context in which these articles are being proposed. Essentially, the state has just recently started accepting license applications, as you may have been reading about, for recreational marijuana establishments. There's 2 other terms that have been used to talk about these establishments. The first is non-medical marijuana establishments. The second is adult use marijuana establishments. So just in case people are wondering, those 3 things are all the same thing. In order for the town to appropriately regulate those things, or specifically regulate them, the town needs to amend its bylaws for those purposes. Municipalities have the right to assert local control over these matters, and the town in Wenham voted 53% against question 4 on last year's the 2016 state election. On question 4. So 53% of the town's voters voted against question 4. And the legislation allows the town, that law allows the town, therefore, to completely ban local marijuana establishments by a simple vote of town meeting. Unlike in towns that approved question 4, where it's both a town meeting vote and a vote at a town election. So in Wenham, all you need to do to either ban or regulate is a vote at town meeting. So Article 17 essentially offers, one of several policy options as to how to proceed. So under 17, it would be a ban on marijuana in the marijuana establishments in the town. This ban would not affect the other rights that are provided to individuals under the Act. So it would not regulate the use of personal marijuana, whether medical marijuana or recreational or adult use marijuana. Persons would still be allowed to have 1 ounce of less or marijuana who are at least 21 years of age or older on their bodies. They would be allowed to have up to 10 ounces of marijuana in their homes for personal use, and any individual can have up to 6 marijuana plants in their home, And if more than one adult lives in the home, they can have up to 12 plants. Now, there are other rules relative to having plants in your home, and we're not going to be talking about those things today, and we're not going to be regulating those things. Those are regulated by state law. No person can give away or transfer to other consumers more than 1 ounce of marijuana, but they can do up to 1 ounce. They can't be paid for that. It can't be advertised to the public, and a person has to be at least 21 years of age or older. In addition, there's no prohibition on people selling or buying accessories, marijuana-related accessories, as long as they're 21 years of age or older. The kind of short form version of the restriction on in-home uses, cultivation or processing can't be publicly visible. You need to be securing any marijuana in your homes by a lock. No matter what would be voted here today, public consumption of marijuana is prohibited by law in any public place or where smoking of tobacco is already prohibited. And people can't have open containers of marijuana in their cars, just like you can't have open containers of alcohol. None of those matters are being addressed today, okay? That's all addressed by state law. So why are there 4 different articles on this issue? Essentially because the town wanted to give the voters the opportunity, the voters at town meeting, the opportunity to make a decision on how to handle marijuana sales in the town. These are really policy decisions that are being placed before you. As I said earlier, Article 17 is a ban. It's a zoning bylaw that would prohibit all sales of marijuana. That requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting. Article 18 is a general bylaw ban, and that requires only a majority vote. Article 19 is a restrictive zoning bylaw that allows one retail license to be issued one retailer to be able to operate in the town. And Articles 18 through 20 will only be acted upon if Article 17 fails. Now, I want to go back to Article 17 for a second and Article 18. Essentially, the Attorney General's office has encouraged towns that are looking to adopt bylaws banning retail sales to adopt a zoning bylaw. But the law doesn't say that exactly, and so if town meeting were to choose, it could adopt a general bylaw ban for that purpose. If it does, and there were any challenge to that, however, if there's interest in having regulations be in place, then those regulations would be adopted under Article 19. So Articles 18 through 20 would only be acted on if the zoning bylaw failed, the zoning bylaw ban. If Article 17 passes, then there's no need for 18 or 19. Okay? Now 20, just for your information, is a special, a local acceptance statute, and that local acceptance statute allows the town to impose essentially a tax on retail sales of marijuana. So if there will be retail sales of marijuana, it makes some sense to consider whether the town should be entitled to a tax that essentially has been allowed by the state and allows the town to recoup certain costs. Okay. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? I see a lady in the back.
Francie Mollet, 25 Front Court. We've been talking about finances, and we've been talking about the school, and we have no commercial base. We had Mullen, and that went away. If you ask Colorado...
I'm sorry. I've got to stop you for a minute because I forgot to have the motion.
Oh,
so
okay.
Just stay right there.
Yes.
So I'm going to call on Ann Weeks from the Planning Board. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can come up to this one.
Maybe I will.
I'm a member of the Planning Board. My name is Ann Weeks. I live at 11 Foster Street. The Planning Board held public hearings on Article 17, the marijuana establishment ban, on the proposed zoning bylaw on March 5th and March 29th, and we recommended favorable action by a 3-to-1 vote. The Planning Board moves that Article 17 be approved as printed in the list of official motions and is shown on the screen.
Okay, now we can do discussion.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. It's just that we really do have no commercial base, and for some of us, it's getting increasingly difficult to meet property taxes. And one of the things, when you talk about the additional tax, ask Colorado how they feel about it. Ask Colorado about the fact that teenage drug use for marijuana use has gone down since they legalized it. So I think it's worth considering. And as far as people being under the influence, I will tell you as someone who bicycles from my house to the train station, distracted driving with people texting worries me a lot more than people having smoked pot. So.
Thank you. Next.
Janice Bertrand, 28 Perkins Street. We need a commercial tax base. This is a license to print money, literally. So I would encourage that we invite this in and with open arms and take the money off their hands and solve some of our other financial problems. Thank you.
In the back.
I just have two quick procedural questions. Ken Whitaker, 17 on Road. If this ban does not pass, is this a one-shot? In other words, we won't have a chance to put it on the ballot? Does this close the issue?
Well, 18.
Madam Moderator, through you, there's no requirement that this appear on the ballot at this time. After 2019, if there is, if a community wants to ban retail or recreational marijuana establishments, then both a town meeting vote and a town election vote will be required. This is not a one-shot opportunity to act on this.
Okay, and I just wanted to clarify that the motion that's coming up, a vote yay is a vote for the ban.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
And because this is zoning, it will take a 2/3 majority vote.
Ladies first.
Hello, my name is Emilia Jahangir. I'm on Hilltop Drive, and I wanted to follow with the other two people who were in favor of getting more money to the town that doesn't come from our property taxes. This is essentially money that the town of Wenham would be forfeiting if we were to vote against this, if we were to vote for this notion. So I encourage the town to vote against banning essentially profits from marijuana sales. And I just wanted to say, kind of on a personal level, I work in the medical profession, and I know there's a lot of stigma associated with the word marijuana and cannabis, and I agree that people might be concerned about nuisances associated with recreational smoking of marijuana, but the fact that the medicinal marijuana is specifically included in the notion certainly surprised me, because it's essentially a pharmacy for people who have run out of medical options such as cancer treatment or other diseases which simply don't have treatment, that cannabis is an option for those patients. So essentially 2 points I wanted to make is free money for the town, which people, if they wanted to buy it in neighboring towns, they could still come here and smoke it, but we'd be giving up that money. And second of all is recreational and medicinal marijuana are different topics. Thank you.
Before you sit down, could I just get you to state your address again? We missed it.
Sure, 5 Hilltop Drive.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, good afternoon, Ed Bertrand, 28 Perkins Street. Banning marijuana dispensary is nuts. This is a license to print money. I would say that in Hamilton, Wenham, we have 2 package stores. We have a number of restaurants that have full liquor licenses, and I would challenge anybody to say to the police department, you guys don't have a problem with DWI, do you? I fear alcohol a lot more than I fear marijuana. I know a lot of people who smoke it. Not a single one of them is a violent individual. I've never seen a problem with a pothead who's got a Cheeto habit. And very frankly, it is ridiculous, given the dearth of businesses that we have in Wenham, that we would pass this up. I would challenge the FinCom to say where else they could get this kind of money, on a legal business. And I'm willing to bet you can't. So I would say, yeah, let's just put this ban and this notion of a bylaw aside, and let's find a way to make some money and bring it into the town. You know, I know this override hurts everybody. It introduces some trepidation. Marijuana is Colorado, California, Oregon, all these places have shown this as a license to print money, and it can be handled with a great deal of ease if the education of the youth is done properly. And, you know, I think we ought to just push forward, open a single dispensary, find somewhere to tuck it away, you know, and then let's just go for it and tax the heck out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Sam Nordberg, 151 Main Street. I wanted to propose an amendment to 17, which is the inclusion of medical marijuana treatment centers in Amendment 17. I'm a medical director at Harvard Vanguard, and I agree with the resident who earlier stated that medical marijuana should probably be distinguished from recreational marijuana. There are a lot of good uses for medical marijuana. Mentioned cancer treatment, also for behavioral health. So my suggestion would be that we amend Article 17 and we remove medical marijuana treatment centers from that language. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have an amendment on the floor.
I think you need a second.
Does anyone want to speak to the amendment? No, back there? Okay. So before we continue, we have an amendment motion on the floor to...
Was the amendment seconded?
I'm sorry?
Did anybody second that?
You need a second.
We don't do the seconds.
I think it's an amendment.
We haven't been taking seconds all afternoon. It's okay. A motion has been made for the amendment. Now we're going to vote on the amendment, and it's a majority vote excluding medical marijuana treatment centers from the original motion. All of those in favor of the amendment, please raise your card. What's that?
The town will not ban medical
Could you
retail
mic me back up?
establishments.
I'm going to ask town council.
Madam Moderator, through you, if the words including medical marijuana establishments are deleted from the motion, then they will not be subject to the ban.
Right.
Okay, so all of those in favor of the amended motion, please raise your card. Thank you. All of those opposed? Sorry. By the cards that I saw, I call that the amended motion passed by the majority to exclude medical marijuana treatment centers from the original motion.
Does it need to be 2/3 because it's a zoning bylaw?
It's a majority. So now we're going to go back and talk about the original motion, if there's any other comments with the amendment made.
Yes, Kirsten Alexander, 231 Larch Row. This is actually about Article 19, but I think it's pertinent to 17, which is just a clarification around the decision to allow a retail sales operation, but not a cultivator. So particularly considering we have a lot of farms here, and I understand Green Meadows Farm is under consideration as an organic pot farm. So I just wondered what the thought was there.
Should we take that up at the time we consider 19 if we get there?
Well, it's my understanding that we might want to finish 17. So now that we've voted on the amendment, is there anyone else wanting to speak on this?
Mary Beth Ting, 23 Burnham Road. I know at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings that I was present for where the articles were being discussed related to marijuana, there was some discussion about the costs involved to the town And I don't recall what all of those are, so I'm hoping that somebody could elaborate, though. Earlier speakers had been talking about license to print money. I would just like to have my mind refreshed on what I feel in statute there are certain things about what the town would need to pay out in order to allow a licensed establishment. So if that could be clarified, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the Board of Selectmen or FinCom that can address this?
This was not discussed by the planning board.
So there are no anticipated expenses on the town side for allowing a retail marijuana establishment to operate in the town. There are potential revenues, some of which are outlined in Article 20, which was referenced earlier, which is that 3% local option sales tax. We also would have the ability, the town, under the statute, any potential applicant would have to negotiate a host community agreement with the community where the town could receive up to 3% additional sales tax for the first 5 years that that establishment was in operation.
Can we go to Mr. Tanis in the back?
Tom Tanis, 5 Eaton Road. You've been talking a little bit about saying how much money it's going to bring in. I happen to be one of the elected assessors, and the amount of money that you're going to bring in is absolutely minimal. It's not going to be even a bleep on your tax rate. I mean, we voted already today to increase our taxes by $1 per thousand. You know, that's a bleep. But what they're going to come in is very little. That's point one. Point two, I guess I've been the only one up here speaking against this. 52% of us in this town by secret ballot voted no. All right? And we're saying we don't want it, as we say, not in my backyard. And in which of your backyards do you want this building to be? And people coming in at whatever the hours are allowed. Thank you.
Sir.
Hey, David Polito, 153 Topsfield Road, forgot my address. And, you know, I just want to say that, you know, this is a sweeping bylaw. I think it's really short-sighted to actually unanimously just vote against the potential to bring in, as far as I know, we don't have anything on the table that wants to move in, correct? Or, right, so we're looking at an article that essentially wipes out a potential revenue stream before anyone's even applied to, you know, for any sort of license. Anyway, I think that's severely short-sighted, is, you know, given that fact that, you know, we have such a limited tax base as it is. You know, to say it's going to be a blip on the radar is actually, I don't even know where you would come up with that number. There's no number to come up with, you know, so how can you say that, as of right now, yeah, sure, it's not going to gain us anything because there's no one coming in. But to just short-sightedly just eliminate the fact that, you know, to accept applications and you have our boards go through their process and, you know, our elected officials do their due diligence in whether or not they actually want to, you know, distribute licenses or anything is extremely short-sighted. So I really think that we should be voting against this because, you know, let it come, take it by a case-by-case basis and, you know, to just eliminate it wholeheartedly before anything even comes to the table. This is extremely short-sighted.
Thank you. In the back?
Yeah, I have to admit, I find it ironic that a town here that was dry for decades and decades and decades is now voting to allow marijuana. That being said, I think it may be a bit of an academic question, too, in terms of is there any likelihood whatsoever that any dispensary is going to open here? All the surrounding towns, and I have a lot of experience up in the city of Gloucester, they have 2 large facilities right now, and they have a number of dispensaries already planned. So to think they're going to move out of Gloucester in their 35,000, 4,000 square foot and, you know, build something here in Wenham is kind of silly. Finally, I find it somewhat almost laughable to say that this is going to have any kind of impact whatsoever on our tax rate or our commercial tax rate. I mean, it's simply not going to happen. So what you're doing here, and I will admit that I'm a vehement opponent of this. I want this ban. I think Wenham is putting its reputation on the line here for a couple of bucks. And I think the town voted, 52% of us said they didn't want it here. I think we have an obligation to stand and express that opinion. So I would encourage you to vote for this ban. Thank you.
Lisa.
Lisa Terranova, 38 Maple Street. 3 really quick points. I thought we had already voted 53% that we did not want marijuana establishments in town. And these next 4 motions were just to codify that. Number 2, nothing comes free. Number 3, could someone please clarify for me, is there a distinction between medical marijuana treatment centers and medical marijuana retail centers? Thank you.
I can take the first question, and I'm going to offer Lauren for your final question. The state vote on the law is the 53% of Wenham voters. So in other words, 50% of Wenham voters showed up in 2016 and voted against legalizing recreational and medical use, well, recreational use. This is the first opportunity, as far as I know, for the town of Wenham to consider whether or not there should be retail sales establishments or medical retail establishments in town. So it's a land use issue and a property issue as opposed to a rights issue. The ban doesn't ban recreational use, it bans establishments for the sale of marijuana in Wenham. And I'll just turn it over to Lauren Goldberg. Mrs. Goldberg, do you want to answer that last question?
Madam Moderator, through you. Just to confirm, the state law said, do you want there to be recreational marijuana use and sales allowed in the state generally? And the town voted 53% no. However, the question of whether, now that it's been allowed in the state generally, the question is, do you want that to occur in this town? And that's what you're voting on right now. There is a difference between a marijuana retailer and a medical marijuana treatment center. A marijuana retailer is an entity that's, and if you look at page 30 of your warrant book, your safety orange colored warrant book, you're going to see E and F are the definitions on page 30 in section 10.2, 10.3.2. And essentially, a marijuana retailer means an entity or a business that's going to be selling marijuana for recreational use, okay? And that's what was specifically allowed under or authorized under question 4 at the 2016 state election. A medical marijuana treatment center was allowed by an earlier law. They used to be called a registered marijuana dispensary, if that helps anybody, an RMD. The name was changed by this legislation to a medical marijuana treatment center. And just to be clear, under the recreational marijuana laws, every part of the business is segregated. So some entities can be retailers, some can be product manufacturers, some can be independent testing laboratories, and some can be cultivators. But you can't be all 4 of those in the retail marijuana business. You can only be one at a time. With a medical marijuana treatment center, it's a vertical operation. All those pieces can be at the same place and owned by the same entity and doing that business. So a medical marijuana treatment center is for medical marijuana use only. And just for people who are not thinking about these issues all the time, to make sure that you're aware, the state law has transferred regulation of medical marijuana treatment centers from the DPH, where it's regulated now, Department of Public Health, to the Cannabis Control Commission. The Cannabis Control Commission is supposed to take over regulating that industry on December 31st, 2018. It has not yet done so. It has not yet issued regulations about how MMTCs will be regulated under state law. DPH had one statutory scheme and one regulatory scheme. That's all going to go away, and it's going to be under the control of the Cannabis Control Commission, but that hasn't happened yet.
Are you waiting in the back? Yeah. The sun's blinding me.
No problem. I'm Jeff Tripp on Pleasant Street.
Could you please introduce yourself and address?
Yeah, Jeff Tripp, 109 Pleasant Street. What I want to know is, has the public safety as a police department may have any comment to make about if there is retail marijuana sales in the town? Do they have a way of discerning who is driving while stoned? And is there any concern on the part of the police department that that will lead to a degradation of public safety? Small kids running around small dark streets in the town. Thank you.
Chief Perkins, would you like to address that question?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's a very difficult question to answer. It would be the equivalent of knowing every person that walked out of a liquor establishment if they were intoxicated. We would do our best to enforce any laws that were in effect. We have concerns if this were to come to town that it would logistically add to our workload, clearly. But it is happening other places, and the will of the people will dictate, and we will rise to the occasion.
Chief, what is the current incident of driving while drunk in town?
No.
Yeah.
No. You can get in line behind the others, please. Are we through? Are we comfortable with that one? Okay, in the back.
Hi, Maureen Weiss, Kimball Ave. So, for or against, I think what I'm hearing at least is that this is a financial consideration. So nothing's been put on the table in terms of any historical data that's been studied anywhere. I know Ipswich is going to be opening. Who has the data that says a little store is going to open somewhere in downtown Main Street? I have no idea. What's their revenue of sales? $1 million? 3% on $1 million is 30 grand. So half the time we're arguing about things about our teachers' salaries and everything else that goes with that. I think there needs to be some historical data or some kind of research that's been put on the table so we know what an establishment is actually going to bring into the town, so everyone can take into account if it's going to, offset our taxes by X dollars, then vote against it or vote for it. But if you're just voting for it because you think all this money is coming into town, I don't know. I would really consider that.
We have no establishments at the moment, so I'm not sure that we know. Okay.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Microphone.
There's historical data somewhere. So you can take an average town like a Wenham with a little tiny storefront like Grassy Roots and say, what are they bringing in? It doesn't have to be Walmart in Los Angeles, but there's data out there somewhere that says what are stores actually bringing in.
Gentleman in the front.
Thank you. Mike Novak from 17 Meridian. I'd like to actually just piggyback right on that comment. A quick Google search, Department of Revenue, Colorado. In 4 years of marijuana sales, their current total is $4.6 billion.
For the state?
For the state, yeah. And that's in 4 years. The other thing I would say is I'll also echo another comment that this is a very quick, broad stroke on a zoning change. I think we could challenge the planning board to do a little better, a little bit more look, both with the financial committee as well, and really establish if we want it here, could it work? And I'll just simply say that.
Can I respond to that quickly?
Please.
We had to take a vote before May 1st or something. We had to make a decision about what we were doing here. And I think the planning board took into consideration what the vote was of the town in the election. And what is here is not just this ban, but then if this ban fails, we took careful consideration about what the bylaw amendment should look like if we had establishments in town. So I just want to clarify that.
I appreciate that response, and I understand your time constraints, but it also sounded like from a previous comment, we would have another shot at this, if I understood town council's response. So maybe just because we have to do it now doesn't mean it can't be better.
Madam Moderator, through you, I just want to try to clarify a few things. So the state started taking applications on April 1, and just we didn't get into a lot of the history here, but as soon as the law was passed, it had several flaws. So that was in November. In mid-December of 2016, the general court, the state legislature adopted an extension to extend the time for it to take effect. Then the Cannabis Control Commission was appointed, or applicants were reviewed, there was appointments made, and they started to draft regulations. They were required by law to have draft regulations, I think it was February 15th, and then to have their final regulations for March 15th. So those final regulations were issued just a few days before March 15th. They provided some level of understanding about how the Cannabis Control Commission was going to handle things. However, it's important to recognize that there were substantive changes from the earlier version of the draft regulations and the regulations that were finally enacted. So that left municipalities all over the state in a kind of situation that was in flux. The Attorney General's office has been stressing that any municipality that wants to adopt a bylaw regulating marijuana should do so as early as possible, because the look back that the State Cannabis Control Commission does is to what was in place on the date that the application was filed. So in this town in particular, where 53% of the voters voted no, the town believed it was appropriate and important to bring something forward for this body's consideration. Again, if someone had come in with an application on April 15th, then now you would have something in place. So, and then to add to that, rather than just come forward with a ban, there is a full kind of suite of options there, including the question of regulating where in town a retail marijuana entity would go and what rules it should be subject to. So 17 and 18 are bans, but 19 is the regulations under zoning for where to put a retail or marijuana retailer. So just to be clear, there was significant thought and consideration given as to what to bring forward, and the decision as to when is really dictated by state law and not by, and this meeting versus any other reason.
Lady in the back.
My name is Dolores Reed. I live at 148 Topsfield Road in Wenham, and I'm against this proposal. My sister lives in Denver, Colorado, and so the state officials are very happy about the taxes, but a lot of the people are not happy about what's happening with the populace. The other thing is we don't have a liquor store here in Wenham, as far as I can see, and if we had a cannabis store, the traffic would improve, would be out of sight. It's bad enough as it is trying to get out of this road into the main road. We probably have to have traffic lights. I'd like to know what the police department would feel about having a cannabis store in Wenham. So my vote would be no.
Mr. Bertrand.
Yes, Ed Bertrand, 28 Perkins. This is directed to the chief. And again, I renew my question as it respects alcohol and the number of DPWs. It seems that we're somehow conflating the incident of marijuana or the problem of marijuana with that of alcohol. And I remain unconvinced that there's any kind of equivalency that you can make between the two. But I would have the chief address the issue of the cost of DPWs and historically what we've run into and what that does to people's safety. Thank you.
Just for clarification, when you say DPWs, do you mean?
Driving DWIs, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not really sure I understand the specific question.
Okay, so here's the issue. What is the cost of arresting somebody under driving while intoxicated, what is the incident on a per month or per year basis of the number of people who are arrested while driving while under the influence of alcohol? And what do you see any kind of equivalency between alcohol and marijuana in your professional police experience as you've arrested people who have been under the influence of one or the other?
I would say arrests for operating under the influence of marijuana is on the rise. I don't have any hard statistical data to back that up, just our own personal experience. We've seen more of it in recent years than we did previously. But as far as a cost analysis, that's something I would have to actually work out for you. I don't have that information at hand. As far as what one single operating under the influence of liquor costs us there's a million variables, how long it goes through the trial system. It would take quite a bit of work to come up with an accurate figure for that.
But do you see a professional equivalency between alcohol and marijuana as a regards sentencing?
As I indicated when we first started the meeting, if you want to move the question, you need to stand in line. Thank you. Lady in the back.
Hi, my name is Natalie Blue. I live at 27 Burley Street. I guess I'm worried about people making a decision on this based on fear of the unknown. And I feel like that's what I hear when I hear whether it's, people are in favor, don't want to ban it because it could bring in a potential revenue stream, and hearing that, it's going to be minimal at the most, and then the ban isn't, I feel like people who are in favor of the ban is about the fear of what's going to come into the town. And I don't think that's really fair. So I guess want to put that out there, that when people are making a decision whether to ban this or not, that you're making it without being afraid. I don't know. And I guess the other kind of thing that I've been thinking about is that, yes, I do see that, hearing about the influence that this has in other states, and that there's a $4.3 billion revenue coming into the state of Colorado, and okay, maybe we get a drop in the bucket of what that is, but, as someone who has young children in the school system and who moved here for the school system and feeling the weight of property taxes, what are the other potential revenue streams in this town? Like how, this is a potential revenue stream, even if it is a drop in the bucket. But if this is going to get banned, what are the Board of Selectmen, what are people thinking about in terms of ways to minimize property taxes? Because this feels like a way to minimize it, even if it's 0.1%, it's something. That's all I have to say.
Because I'm hearing a lot of questions regarding financial, Alex, could I call on you?
Yes, Madam Moderator, thank you. So to back up a little bit, this is not a financial article. The charge of Wenham FinCom is to consider all appropriations, expenditures, disposition of assets, things like that. This doesn't involve that, not in the least. We're not considering here or debating fictitious, made-up numbers on either side, whether there's bags of cash or it's a drop in the bucket. That's not what we're discussing here. This is a policy matter, hence, in your books, Wenham FinCom did not recommend action either way. We didn't vote on the public forum to recommend action. Board of Selectmen did. So my understanding, however, having been in many open meetings with the Board of Selectmen, with Lauren, our town council, town administrator, and others, is that this is a policy response to the previous vote on behalf of residents, consistent with the direction of that vote, quite simply. Now, there are financial implications to whether any business is allowed to enter, prosper in town, clearly, but we're not discussing whether or not this is 5,000, 50 trillion. None of that is really at play here at this stage of the game. This is a zoning bylaw policy decision, and certainly it results in the merits of whether or not marijuana should be permitted, disallowed, whatever. But I just want to make it clear, because the FinCom has been invoked a couple times here, challenging us to find revenue, so that it's not a FinCom matter. It doesn't affect your FY19 budget. I'm sorry to say. If it did, maybe I'd have more to say. Thank you.
I'm trying to take them in order as I see them coming to the mic. So we're going to go one to the back and then up here to this gentleman.
Kirsten Alexander, 231 Larch Row. Just a point of clarification, perhaps from council, as to whether medical marijuana treatment centers, in terms of how much we can add a tax locally, is that treated differently from marijuana retailers?
Madam
In
Moderator.
state law.
Yeah. There is no local tax that can be put on medical marijuana treatment centers. It's only on retail sales of marijuana. There's a whole other statutory scheme applicable to medical marijuana treatment centers, but it doesn't include a local tax.
Okay, thank you.
Front mic, please.
I make a motion to move the question.
Could you identify yourself and address?
Josh Lebo, 24 Burnham Road.
Okay, so that we have a motion to move the question. So with that in mind, we are going to go for a vote because there has been a motion to move the question. So we are going to take a vote on the main motion as... I'm sorry, I always forget this. So we need to vote on the motion to move the question. So all of those in favor, please raise your hand, your card. Thank you. All opposed? It takes a majority. 2/3, but I can call it. It's to move the question passed by the 2/3 majority vote. So now we're going to vote on the main motion as amended. All of those in favor, please raise your card.
You're voting for the ban if you raise your card in favor of the motion.
I've got, is it just?
I think I can, but council?
Yep.
Article 17. Yep. Yeah. Madam Moderator, through you, the ban would read as follows. Consistent with, I'm not going to read the specific statute, all types of marijuana establishments as defined in General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 1, to include cultivators, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturers, retailers, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business shall be prohibited within the town of Wenham, and that excludes medical marijuana treatment centers.
All right. Now, we are going to raise our voter card in favor of Article 17.
Which
All
is
of
the
those in
ban.
favor, please raise, which would be banning. Okay, thank you. All of those opposed. I declare Article 17 is passed by the 2/3 majority. So if I understand this correctly, we can move right over to 21. Yes? So, yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
It's a question on the floor.
Just a minute, please. Why don't you go to the mic?
Just a point of clarification, if it changes because we left out the medical marijuana establishments, would we still have to vote on those?
Oh.
I would think that all,
I think council read the amended motion and we voted on that.
that's what I'm saying, but wouldn't a couple of these still apply?
It crossed my mind earlier and I forgot.
Oh.
Whether or not, do we need 18, 19?
Yeah.
And 18 is a general law.
So 18 is the is the selectmen's ban. We don't need that because we've passed 17. I'm sorry. 19 is retail marijuana establishments and where they can be located, but we've banned those. We're only, the amended motion only included marijuana treatment centers. So this is irrelevant to that. And then 20, which is the tax. So I don't have my, it's not on here. So it doesn't apply since it doesn't apply to treatment centers. So
All right.
We're done with
Okay,
18
just a
through
minute.
20. I'm still up there. I got 21, 22, 23, 24.
Oh, this is
Are we good to go? Okay, so it sounds like to me we are good to go to 21. Okay?
You're relieved.
Okay?
No, 21 is me still.
Says Jack Wilhelm right here.
Oh, 21. Oh, you're the best part. It's a zoning bylaw, so I thought it was me.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have a question already?
Okay.
Madam Moderator, I challenge the presence of a quorum.
Okay. So we have a question of the quorum before us. So if we could have our counters come up to the front, please. Diane, do they know who they are? That's right.
Madam Clerk, a number of people left the room immediately after the vote. I don't think you can get a valid count at this point as to who was here to vote.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said a number of people have already left the room after the vote was taken. So how are you going to get a valid count?
But that's
now?
okay. This only affects going forward. Whatever we've already
Okay.
voted on stands.
Thank you.
Okay? So this would go forward. So if the counters could come forward, please. We got to count the quorum. We've got to count everybody to see if we have the quorum, to see if we can continue. Do you want to give them their instructions, or do they know, Diane? Okay. So if everybody could just please stay seated. Everybody should have a seat so that we can make sure that we get everyone counted who's a resident.
Do you want me to stand? Well, I've got 22 through whatever.
Yeah. What? Okay, it might be easier if you raise your cards. Sir, we have to count the people that are still in the room to determine if we have a quorum. It's nothing. We are just, somebody called the quorum, so we have to take a count. That's all we're doing right now. It's not a yes or no question. So just please raise your voter card so it's easier for the counters to see.
Just as a point of clarification, in order to proceed with our meeting, we must have a certain number of registered voters present. Seems as if a lot of people have left.
Mike.
It is on. In order, is that better? Just as a point of clarification, in order to continue with our meeting, in order to start our meeting, we needed to have a quorum, a certain number, percentage of registered voters present in the room to vote. It seems as if many people have left, and the gentleman has questioned whether we still have the required number of people in order to continue to vote appropriately and legally on these issues. So all the counters are doing is counting the number of people in the room. And if it's less than a quorum, we will not be able to continue.
Okay. I forget the number. I can't find it. I thought I... Can I be counted? Can I be counted? Just be patient with us for a few minutes.
Because whenever quorum,
You guys going to the bar round? It'll be soon. So what's your handicap?
What's the number?
Okay, can I have your attention?
We're going to recess for 20.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to recess for 20 minutes. We only need like 18 people. We still have a few more articles to continue, which would let us finish up town meeting business. So I'm going to ask for everyone's patience to stay here for another 20 minutes. Call your friends and family and see if we can get a few more people to come in and help us finish this meeting.
Can we get a point of clarification on what happens
What happens?
if
What?
we don't have a quorum? So
We don't have quorum, so what we are doing right now is taking a 20-minute recess in hopes that a few more people will come back and nobody else leaves.
If we don't have that, though?
If we don't have the quorum, then the meeting adjourns. Nope, nope.
Madam Moderator, so just to clarify, if when town meeting reconvenes in 20 minutes, we aren't able to get a quorum, someone will have to make a motion to adjourn to a specific time, date, and place where the meeting would continue. That's the only thing that a meeting with less than a quorum can do, is adjourn to a specific time, date, and place. You think people are leaving?
They're leaving. Not until we, well, there's one up there. I actually see people on their phones calling. Yeah. So do we need to set another?
No. Yeah, we're gonna look.
So you said that at,
47.
Am I okay? Excuse me, if everybody could take a seat. I know we have to count again. So while we're waiting for everybody to take their seats, I'd like to thank everyone for staying. And if there's anyone who returned, thank you. So we've got our counters in place. We are going to take another count. If you could raise your voter card and be patient while we do this. Everyone raise your voter card. If you've just walked in, come in and take a seat. Nobody's leaving. They can come in, Diane. They, oh, she's counting them. I need that.
could put your card down there.
Jack, it's in a permanent, it's muscle memory.
We're 11 short. I'm surprised at that time. Well, we got all the financial articles out of the way, so, you know. Good job. I have to make a motion, that's what I'm saying. It'll be a short motion.
Jack motion.
Oh, come on.
Okay, excuse me. We're going to count one more time because we're just a few short, so please be patient with us. So if everybody could take a seat who's got a blue card, it would be greatly appreciated. And please don't leave. You can put down your blue cards. Thank you. Give us just 2 minutes. Are we done counting? All right, thank you all for your patience. At this time, we do not have a quorum, so I'm going to, just everybody please stay seated. I'm going to call on Jack Wilhelm.
I move that we adjourn this annual town meeting and reconvene on Saturday, April 28th at 1 p.m. here. April 20, what did I say? April 28th, I said. You don't like that date?
Do you want to wait to see if more people come? Right now? Okay. Okay. 10 or so. No, April 28th. Jack, April 28th.
Oh, that's not good.
April 28th.
I said that.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say that traditionally, when you have weeknight, short, small meetings, you get way more attendance. And if you're going to do it on a middle of the day, on a Saturday, you ruin people's morning because they can't do stuff, and you ruin people's afternoon because they can't do stuff.
Well, how about 9 in the morning then? How about 8? How about cocktail hour, 4:30? So
But if you don't make a quorum that day, right, because it's still going to have to be the full 5% quorum, you're going to have to do it on a weeknight anyway. But
we're not sure. We debated whether we do it on a weeknight or not. We're not sure. We don't have any experience with that. We're not sure that we have a quorum.
Sure. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to
Hold
take
on.
a
This is
non-binding,
democracy.
just for the fun of it. A sense of a meeting. So why don't you raise your voter card if you would like, if you're in favor of a weeknight. And we expect all of you to attend. Okay? Okay. Now, wait a minute. Now, all of those who would prefer a weekend on a Saturday, please raise your card. Okay, so give us a minute so that we can pick a date so that we can adjourn the meeting.
What day of the week is that? Okay, we have a change. I don't know if we're going to vote on this or not, but so how about Monday, April 23rd at 7 p.m.? How does that sound? Here. Boo-hoo, okay. We'll have to talk to the schools to find out we can actually rent this room for the night. I don't know. Are you going to still be the chairman by then? Okay. That's it.
Okay, wait a minute. So, Monday night.
Third at 7 p.m. here.
I'm sorry, the date again. April 23rd at 7 p.m.
Monday,
here.
April 23rd, 7 p.m. here.
Is there a second? Okay. Motion, meeting is adjourned. All of those in favor? Thank you. Now the meeting's adjourned? Meeting is adjourned.